everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here. And, it was another day today of looking at the social media, waiting to see if there would be any news breaking on the things that we're waiting around for an answer on Harrison Smith, waiting around for what else are they going to do with this roster. Are there any other moves? Are there contract extensions to creating cap space? Did the Jonathan Grenard trade idea just go poof into the ether and we pretend like that never happened? Or are those things still pending? But there wasn't any movement on those items today, but there was some incredibly interesting reporting that came from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated regarding Kyler Murray's visit. So what Breer had in his piece was a behind the scenes of Kyler Murray's visit. If you were wondering, Kyler likes Parlor Burger, just like you. He is really, I think, doing a good job of endearing himself pretty early to Vikings fans, talking in his press conference about crying tears when Brett Favre threw the interception in 2009. And Murray has apparently been a longtime Vikings fan, so now he gets to come here. That's 2 years in a row the Vikings have acquired somebody else's top draft pick quarterback who was a Vikings fan. Who knew? But there are more things in this article than just where Kyler Murray decided to eat when he was in Minnesota, but also some very interesting details of the discussions between Murray and Kevin O'Connell and the team. So let's get into that. I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs, and then we'll talk about what it means that O'Connell would say these things. So we'll jump right in. From Albert Breer, and I encourage everyone to go read the article. I've tweeted it out. You can find Albert Breer on Twitter pretty easily, or just Google search, read the whole thing. Don't just take my word for it here. But I'll give you a couple of paragraphs, and then we'll break down the most interesting stuff. So Breer wrote this. Well, Murray still has to win the job from J.J. McCarthy. What O'Connell said to Murray did stick with him, that he was the one guy on the market that they could see as a potential longer range answer rather than a one-year Band-Aid. The idea of growing with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Christian Darrisaw, and O'Connell and his staff was already wildly attractive to begin with. The chance to perhaps put down roots only made it more so. And another paragraph stuck out to me in which Breer wrote, Murray, Brzezinski, and O'Connell and Burkhart, which is Eric Burkhart, the agent for Kyler Murray, and a few others had lunch in the draft room. The Vikings brass broke off for a final meeting with the doctors. Then O'Connell pulled Murray aside and told him he wanted him to come aboard. Murray responded, "This is where I want to be." And from there, Brzezinski and Burkhart went to negotiate a relatively simple deal on the minimum. He said a second year was briefly explored and a no tag provision was included. So a second year was briefly explored is also a very interesting sentence in this article by Albert Breer, because obviously that would mean that they were thinking about, is there any chance that they could have him for multiple seasons? And of course, with Murray's situation, that wouldn't be anything that his side would want to agree to, because Arizona's footing the bill for this year, but then he wants to get a long-term contract after that. But the fact that they even broached the discussion, the Vikings did, of a second year is interesting in itself. So I have really three takeaways from the sentences that we just read. The first one is, as it's regarding J.J. McCarthy, I saw a lot of people saying, okay, well, that's the end of that. Good night, J.J. McCarthy. See you later, pal. That could very well be. For sure. I mean, if you're going out and getting a starting quarterback who executives and coaches have consistently ranked in the top 15 in the NFL, your chances of your quarterback who did not play well as a second-year player returning and becoming your franchise quarterback are already low to begin with. So it's not anything that we didn't know. And I always thought from the beginning that where they went with this decision would tell us a lot about where they stood with J.J. McCarthy. If they had gone out and gotten Joe Flacco or Marcus Mariota or something like that, then that would show a lot of belief in McCarthy. But instead, they went out and got the best quarterback that you could possibly get, and someone who's not particularly old in his career. Even Geno Smith would have still fallen under the category as real competition for JJ McCarthy. And I would have seen that as, well, let's find out if McCarthy can beat him out and Geno's really old and it's a 1-year type of Band-Aid solution. And let's see what happens. But already just bringing in Murray opened up the door, I think we knew, for the possibility of a longer term option here. And it also made it very unlikely that McCarthy would beat him out, because there's other quarterbacks that have assorted histories in the NFL, and maybe they've had some good times, maybe not, or maybe they're 40 years old like Joe Flacco and they've bounced around to a bunch of different teams. And if that's who they ended up landing with, then you could say, all right, well, that's a real competition, and that's a very, very most, that's a 1-year type of solution and whatever else. But with someone like Kyler Murray, he's just too good. He's just above that bar to say, all right, well, this is going to be a very much legitimate competition with those two guys, and McCarthy's got an equal chance to beat him out, or they really want to go with McCarthy. It doesn't look like that on its face. So this isn't anything that we couldn't have sort of surmised on our own. And we saw a lot of people, a lot of analysts. I know Louis Riddick was sort of putting it out there that, hey, this means that they're done with JJ McCarthy. I don't think done is the right word, because life is too unpredictable in itself. The NFL is even more unpredictable. And to say done doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it's March. If this was 2/3 of the way through the season and Kyler Murray was leading the NFL in PFF grade and the Vikings were undefeated, then yeah, you could say it's pretty clear that Kyler Murray's going to be their guy and they're going to move on from JJ McCarthy. But there have been so many things through Vikings history at the quarterback position that we did not see coming over the years, including kind of this, that we didn't see coming, or Sam Darnold's emergence, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What happened with Teddy Bridgewater? How about Sam Bradford? The 2017 offseason, if I had asked any person during training camp with the Minnesota Vikings, hey, how do you feel about Sam Bradford? They would have said, we need to lock him up long term. This guy has done so well as the quarterback in 16, but then looks like he's about to blow up. And then how about that week 1 game in 2017? And then Bradford never plays another game as a Minnesota Viking and played one more year in the NFL where he started a couple games and then he was done. And that was it. That was his whole career. So you never know where things are going to take you in the NFL. And I'm sure the 49ers could speak to this, drafting Brock Purdy sort of just for the heck of it, because they thought that maybe, he had good processing and there was some test that he did well on and he understood their offense pretty well. So they just sort of grab him in the 7th round just to take a little swing. And maybe they hoped at the time he was going to be a backup quarterback. He ends up being their franchise guy and not Trey Lance. So you don't have the ability to predict where quarterbacks are going to go in the NFL. So it'd be silly to just say right now, oh yeah, they're totally done with JJ McCarthy. There's no chance that he ever starts another game for them, because things happen and it's plausible that Kyler Murray could get hurt. It's plausible that JJ McCarthy could be awesome in training camp and get some opportunities during the season to play and totally change the way the organization feels about him right now and his chances of being a long-term starting quarterback. That's all still potentially on the table. But the odds of it, when your head coach is telling someone else, I could see you as a long-term option for us, the odds of that ever happening, of JJ McCarthy returning to be this team's starting quarterback, are not very high at the moment. So done is the wrong word, but they're not very high at the moment. And when you tell someone that, it kind of makes it sound like you want that to be the outcome, right? If you say to a lady or a gentleman that you're dating, if you say to them, I could see myself marrying you, that's a pretty good compliment, right? You don't just say that to anybody. You say that to someone that you really like and are really hoping is the person that's going to be with you for long term. If you were, sort of dating someone else, you're not telling another person, hey, I hope we eventually get married. So that's one thing. The other thing is I started to think about what's the bar. So I think we all agree on this, that there is a bar that Kyler Murray could reach where you would say, oh, yes, do that. And I got into this a little bit on the show yesterday, and I want to go through it in a little more detail about how things have changed since Kirk, because I know that because with Kirk and his contract, that there is a very real fear of ever giving a quarterback any money. But I think that things are different now than they were when Kirk signed his contract. And I also think that Kirk's contracts in particular made that really hard, and where they were in their timeline made that really hard, and so forth. But there is a bar I think we would all say, if Kyler Murray is yay good, then yeah, it makes complete sense. Or how about put it this way? Because that's hard to do with a stat line, especially since stat lines can be a little funny sometimes. I mean, Jacoby Brissett had a very good stat line, and his team went 1-11 with him starting, and I respect the heck out of Jacoby Brissett, but I would not just look at that stat line and say, oh yes, sign Jacoby Brissett to a 5-year contract because that's his stat line. We get fooled a lot by stats sometimes, right? They can look better or worse than the player actually is. So I think what I would do with that situation is maybe put boxes to check for Kyler Murray. Can you check all of these boxes? And then we talk about a long-term type of contract. The first box that Kyler Murray has to check is staying healthy. His history is not maybe quite as bad as it looks if you go to Pro Football Reference or something and just look at how many starts he had, because this year he should have been recovered enough to come back and play, but they just decided to roll it out with Jacoby Brissett. There was no reason to bring back Kyler Murray and have him win a couple games that they didn't really want to win. So, okay, well, let's, kind of write a little bit of that off. But there was a foot injury that is mentioned in the Albert Breer piece that did keep him out, at least for some extent of time. He had the ACL, which cut into 2 seasons. That's what I mean when you go to his number of starts. It looks like he got hurt twice. He didn't. It was the same injury, and it cut into 2 seasons. And then you go back, and there's some nicks and cuts early in his career. He's out for, I think, 3 games in 2000, or maybe it's 2 games, 2 or 3 games in 2021, which was his best overall season. But he has to stay healthy. If they get 8 games out of Kyler Murray and it's great, but he is injured, and sometimes it's random and whatever else, but that's going to be hard to make an argument. Yes, sign this guy up to a 5-year contract extension, make him QB1, paint his picture on the side of US Bank Stadium in a mural or something like that's not going to happen if he only plays a handful of games. They need him to stay healthy for the majority of the season. So that's box number 1. Box number 2 is that he and Kevin O'Connell connect on a very good level. And I had Josh Weinfuss on the show the other night, the reporter from ESPN who's covered Murray's entire career. And he talked in depth about how close Jonathan Gannon and Kyler Murray got during Gannon's 3-year stint there. So if people act like it's impossible for Murray to be close with his coach or get along with his coaches just because of the way that it ended with Cliff Kingsbury, well, that's obviously incorrect. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee that he and Kevin O'Connell are going to be sharing Thanksgiving dinner together or whatever. So those two need to build a relationship on a few different levels. They need to see the game the same way schematically. Murray has to be able to execute the things that Kevin O'Connell wants him to do, which I think is a question. I push back a little bit on some of the stuff that gets said about that subject, but I think it is a question of, do they see what Murray does well and what he can execute at his best, and what O'Connell is going to want to push him a little bit more on? Do they see that in a similar light when they're watching tape and when they're going through their meetings? Because O'Connell, like many coaches do, has a sit-down meeting with the quarterback before each game, and they go through stuff. And I remember reading in Bruce Arians' book that it was the 3rd down plays that he would let his quarterback pick. So he would have a bunch of plays, and it'd be Carson Palmer, and he would say, all right, pick your 10 favorites for third down. These are going to be in the game plan because you want your quarterback to be very comfortable on third down. So he has those types of meetings. I believe he calls them the red pen, where the quarterback kind of go through and, all right, I'm not comfortable with that kind of thing. So they have those meetings. How do those go? And are they seeing the same things? Because I'm sure there's a push and pull there of, hey, the coach wants this to work and believes that schematically something is going to fit, but maybe the quarterback's not comfortable. Can they get on the same page there? I think if you're nominating all coaches with their chances to connect with a quarterback that maybe some people think doesn't always with his coaches, O'Connell would be nominated pretty high on the list as someone who is a football junkie, a quarterback junkie, and also very positive and enthusiastic in the way that he approaches the quarterback position. And the reviews from all the quarterbacks that he's worked with, especially the veteran ones, even Daniel Jones, have always been very high about working with him on a daily basis. So there's a good chance of that he connects with O'Connell, but it's not 100% chance that two people who have never worked together, working together for the first time, can click. The other one is Justin Jefferson. This is another box that it is just not debatable, has to work. You cannot have Justin Jefferson running for the love of the game out there and getting 3 catches while Kyler Murray scrambles 15 times. Now, if you watch his recent tape, that's not really what happens. His number of carries per game. Sometimes you would think that he was scrambling on every other play based on the way people talk about him. He averages like 35 yards rushing a game. It's hardly that this guy is scrambling and taking off every other play. That's not really what happens. But there are times where he passes up throws to his top receivers. There are times where he escapes the pocket earlier than he should. There are times where I don't think either can see down the field or is unsure about something throwing down the field, which may impact Justin Jefferson to some extent. Now, when we look at his top targets, and not just top receivers, but top targets, and what Trey McBride was able to do in mostly a receiver role, and when you look at what DeAndre Hopkins was able to do, his accuracy, his timing, all of those things are very good, and he's usually able to get the top receiver the ball. But that goes along the same lines and category as like Kevin O'Connell. Like, this should work, and on paper, this makes a lot of sense of why it would work, but it's not 100% because nothing is 100%. So if I were projecting a healthy Kyler Murray and a healthy Justin Jefferson over 17 games, I'd say he ends up with, 96 catches for like 100 or 1,300 yards and, 5 touchdowns or something. 10 touchdowns? I don't know. Jefferson's not a big touchdown guy because everyone covers him. But the point just being, like, I would project a huge season for Justin Jefferson, but it's not 100% chance. So there's the main boxes that you have to check. And I think that there's other things that you could throw in there of, well, the team has to have success. And that's, I think, a box that you have to check as well. Because if Jefferson gets a lot of yards and O'Connell really likes Kyler Murray and they're best friends and they're riding a double bike or whatever, up and down Nicolette, okay, that's great, but you got to win games. And one of the things about Murray in recent years is there have been some situations where, and they haven't had a great defense, and I think Jonathan Gannon, for the things that he did well, did not game manage well. In fact, he probably blew the Vikings game in 2024 by kicking the field goal of death to go up 6 and allowing Sam Darnold to go down the field and win the game. There's a lot of that actually in the Arizona games when you watch them back from 24 and 25, where you're like, dude, if you go for one more first down here, you can win the game. And then they would not do it, and the other team would come back or whatever else. They settled for a lot of field goals, and it was frustrating. But regardless, you have to win. If Murray leaves here after this year with 8 wins, I mean, you just can't, like, unless the defense completely fell apart and everybody but even then, if you won fewer games than you did with Brosmer and Wentz playing, and every season's its own thing, you have to be in, I think, the double-digit wins to start talking about Murray as a long-term quarterback. I mean, maybe if everything goes sideways and you lose every one-score game and you still get 9 and make the playoffs, I could be convinced if he played really, really well. But mostly, that's where you do feel like you get into Kirkland. And I was just going back and looking through again to make sure I had it right of the NFL executives and where they had placed Kyler Murray with Mike Sando's stuff. And he was 12th, 13th, 13th, 17th, 15th over the last 5 years. So he's in that ballpark. But you know who else was often in that ballpark was Kirk Cousins. And they could kind of only go so far with Cousins. Murray's playmaking gives you a potentially higher ceiling, but some of his limitations can possibly hold him back from taking a team to 11, 12, 13 wins. He's done it once with an 11-win season, but he has had top 10-ish offenses. He has not had top 5 type of offenses. Run games have been middling. Supporting casts haven't been good. If you listen to Ian Hartitz earlier on the show, he pointed out that the Cardinals in his metrics for supporting cast had, I think, the 9th worst supporting cast since maybe 2020 or something like that when Kyler Murray was there. So there's all those things. There's all those things that you can add up and say, well, this will be better for him. This will be better for him. But if he doesn't come through and you don't win, then it would be very hard to say, here's a 4-year, $150 million contract. Off we go into the future. And then the last box that you'd have to check is, well, what is the price tag? Because if you look at Sam Darnold's contract, technically it was 3 years, 110, I believe, but it wasn't really 3 years, 110. It was much more flexible than that. His salary cap hit for this year was not that bad at all. And a lot of the contracts that are being signed by quarterbacks that are more in the middle are pretty reasonable. The Baker Mayfield type of deal, there is now a middle class of quarterbacks. It's sort of settled itself where not everyone is getting the Joe Burrow dollars, the Josh Allen dollars. And Murray was and Trevor Lawrence were like the last guys to get that. And then it feels like the NFL went, whoa. We can't do that. And teams are a little bit more willing to let their quarterbacks even go or franchise tag them as the Dallas Cowboys did. Now, the Cowboys screwed that situation up, but they were willing to franchise tag Dak Prescott because I think they weren't totally sold. And then he played really, really well. And, they go from there. But the point just being that there has been a middle class that's sort of emerged. So if Kyler Murray wins 11 games and is the 12th best quarterback in the NFL this year, which is where he has sort of settled in the eyes of the NFL and in the eyes of PFF when he plays well, if they win 11 games, 12th best quarterback in the league, top 10 defense, they go into the playoffs, who knows what happens? I think maybe we learned our lesson, maybe not, about judging a quarterback on a single playoff game. But that might matter a little bit in terms of a negotiation. If he's looking to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL because he knows he's going out on the open market, that would be very difficult for the Vikings to build around in their current state. They are trying to get their salary cap situation right. They are trying to stack up draft capital, but they are not the Seattle Seahawks adding Sam Darnold, where Seattle just destroyed this last draft. I mean, Gray Zabel, Nick Emanware, huge contributors for them. They made some incredible moves in free agency by getting DeMarcus Lawrence there, a couple other role players, Rashid Shaheed in a trade. Everything that they did turned to absolute gold around Sam Darnold, and they stayed healthy in order to win the Super Bowl. I mean, the Vikings, after 2026, would have to be very confident in what they had in terms of a young core. And who knows exactly what's going to happen in the Jordan Addison situation? Like, is he going to have a healthy and a good year off the field and end up getting a contract extension? Or does it look like that is coming to an end at some point here soon? So there's a lot to be decided around Kyler Murray. But if he checks those other boxes, my point is you can work out things with a contract these days, especially with the flexibility and there is the void year situation and so forth, that in the past when Kirk was first signing his contracts, teams were not doing very much of that. And the fact that Kirk always wanted it as guaranteed as possible made the money very difficult to move around. If you have a contract that says $120 million, but actually only 60 of it is guaranteed, well, you've got a little bit more flexibility there with that player. And we've seen just recently, even Mahomes and Jackson and these guys having their contracts restructured, and it does push money down the road, but at least it gives you flexibility to make additions around that player. So the structure and how much he would want to get paid would matter as well. But here's what we know, and here is the bottom line of what Kevin O'Connell is saying, is that it matches up with, I think, all of our common sense when they signed Kyler Murray, which is, hey, under the right set of circumstances, this guy could be their quarterback. But, it's got to check those boxes. But I think we all knew that under a certain situation that they would keep Kyler Murray because you're so uncertain, to be polite, about what JJ McCarthy is going to be. And sometimes I don't really fully understand when people act like JJ McCarthy is a total mystery. He's not. I mean, he's played 10 games in the NFL, and they've gone about as poorly as you can play 10 games in the NFL. That's not a mystery. That's not, oh man, they need to find out. Well, they found out a lot. And they also found out that he struggles to stay healthy as well. So I think if you're the Vikings, yeah, you're thinking about what's our long-term option going to be? How are we going to go forward when, especially if you win a fair number of games, even if the 2027 draft does have 4 quarterbacks in the first round, are you going to get one of them? Because the last time this happened was 2024. That was historic with the number of first round quarterbacks. And by number 10, 5 of them were off the board. So it's not easy to get a top quarterback. And even someone like Fernando Mendoza, who I really like, but I mean, is he a number 1 overall pick, kind of traditionally of what we think of someone in their skill set of being a number 1 overall pick? Probably not, but teams have to do it. The Raiders in their position, they have to do it. But and then there's nobody else in the first round. Like, it kind of tells you how hard that is to draft a quarterback if you are not in that top 15 or even top 10, because teams are going to take them if they're worth it. So you have to be thinking about the potential for Kyler Murray. So I'm very curious about that. In fact, we could make that our FanDuel question of the day. If you got a stat line or if you have your box to check, what is it? Right now, the Vikings are plus 600 to win the NFC North. Still, it didn't really move much with Kyler Murray signing with the Vikings. But if he wins the division, is that good enough for you? Like, where's your bar for Kyler Murray to be the Vikings' longer-term quarterback? But my point is, with the way contracts are structured, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a 5-year, $250 million, fully guaranteed type of contract. The NFL world has corrected, and not to mention that the salary cap has exploded every single year, going up and up and up. So if you signed Murray to a $40 million a year, 3-year contract next year, and the first year cap hit is, I don't know, 20 million or something like that. Once you get into adding restructures, an extension at some point, kicking money down the road, which I know people don't like, but is a much more viable strategy than it used to be. I mean, it used to be something that we looked at and went, oh my, they're going to end up with $1 gazillion of dead cap. But now, even if you do end up with some dead cap versus a $300 million salary cap, as opposed to, gosh, what was it when Kirk signed? Was it like 170? I mean, it's a really crazy change in the NFL, thanks to, I guess, Amazon and playing every single holiday. And I don't know, like, I don't know how the finances work. So it's gotten a little bit more feasible than it was before. I want to run over a couple of quick notes and then get to your thoughts in just a second about this. Shoot back over here. Christian Kirk. I had him on my list yesterday as somebody that might be interesting for the Minnesota Vikings, and he signed with the 49ers today on a 1-year, $6 million contract for Christian Kirk. So there are still a few connected Kyler Murray wide receivers out there. And I think if anything, the wide receiver market is still okay, like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Cooks and some guys that whose names are out there. And I am curious if DeAndre Hopkins would entertain the idea. He was tweeting today about, being a good teammate and so forth with Baltimore, because he was commenting on some highlight that someone posted. Last year, he was okay as a veteran receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, averaged 15 yards a catch. If he was interested in coming and playing with Kyler Murray, I'd be curious about that. I'm also starting to think, and the minute I say this, they'll make some signing and just prove me completely wrong, but it feels like there's not going to be a whole lot of movement for the Vikings until after June 1st. I believe that Jonathan Allen's designation for his contract was a June 1st cut. So are you going to do it then? But also, I mean, I don't know. Like maybe that's the late summer signings are probably more on the table, or it might also be until they get something resolved with Brian O'Neill or something resolved with Blake Cashman to create a little bit more cap space for right now. And then they would consider making some additions. I mean, they have to sign some people. It's just a matter of when. And the wide receiver 3 position, I kind of thought Christian Kirk would make a lot of sense because, as you can see, the price would be right. 1 year, $6 million is not a whole heck of a lot for a guy who's got a history with Kyler Murray, and last year was okay as a member of the Houston Texans, but the price is just so low. They need someone to compete at wide receiver 3, and I did see that there was a mock draft that was put out there today. That was the first time I had seen the Vikings have a wide receiver going at number 18, which is also kind of interesting. Something has to happen in that receiver room. It can't just be Ty Felton and Miles Price. They've got to have a plan there. But, Hollywood Brown is another guy who's out there. He's had injury issues through his career, but he's also had some moments through his career. Maybe that's an option as well. And one other note from a slow day in the NFL in terms of the news cycle, the Vikings announced that CJ Ham and Adam Thielen will both retire officially on Thursday. So there's going to be a press conference. I will be there. And I promised a podcast after CJ Ham called it quits where we could wax poetic about CJ Ham, but now doing it with Adam Thielen as well. We'll talk about that on Thursday night. We'll play you some of their press conference, and we will kind of go back in time a little bit with two guys. I mean, right now, I was thinking about this today. These two guys were both here for the Minneapolis Miracle, and so was Harrison Smith. If Smith retires, then that'll be everybody. I do not believe there will be anyone left on the Vikings roster if Harrison Smith retires who was here for the Minneapolis Miracle. We are all very old. So let's get to your thoughts, your comments here. But, congratulations to those guys on incredible careers. And again, we'll Thursday night, we'll have we'll share our memories of CJ Ham and Adam Thielen and so forth. So, okay, let's get to the chat here. And, they didn't June 1st, Alan? I thought that they did. I guess I hadn't checked in. It made sense to do that, but if they didn't, then I get it. Okay. If they didn't June 1st, Alan, I'm sorry. That's my bad. I thought that it would make sense if they did. So I guess that's why that was in my head. I'll have to see. Right now, they're only listed as having $5.9 million in cap space. I mean, they need to sign a draft class. Like, that's not enough. Stuff still has to happen. So, there's a lot of people who have been saying, like, why haven't they signed, anybody? Like, well, they didn't create enough cap space to sign anybody at the moment. And I think that those extensions, or this is why a Jonathan Grenard trade does make sense, because it opens up cap space. You can add a couple of more players to your current roster and start to fill in the aggregate, to use the Billy Beane phrase from Moneyball, for a really good player. If they decided to do that and then maybe pick up some draft capital. It's just that there's been no buzz or rumors at all about a Grenard trade. I suppose maybe it'll just drop on us at some point if they do that. Dawn says, don't see Harrison coming back. Well, I mean, you have gotten to the point where we know at least he's considering it, because otherwise he would have retired by now. So he's got to be thinking about it if we're already into mid-March and he has not made his decision. And they also have let every safety, no matter how cheap, come off the board. And they are fairly comfortable with Josh Metellus, Jay Ward, and Theo Jackson after Jay Ward stepped up last year at the end of the season. Still, if they were really thinking that Harrison for sure was out, then I imagine they would have signed someone, unless they've got plans to draft Dylan Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, or, who knows, if Caleb Downs drops or something like that. That is a possibility as well. But at very least, he's thinking about it, because when they announced last week that they were officially cutting him with the post-June 1st designation, that it was a procedural move and that he was staying in contact with the team still. So that doesn't scream like he's retiring tomorrow, but maybe he'll like WWE style show up on Thursday and be like, I'm retiring too, with CJ Ham and Adam Thielen. I don't know. Maybe that's going to happen. I've always thought that, he wouldn't put it out there to anybody and it would just sort of happen when it was going to happen, that it wouldn't be something that got leaked or whatever else. Rach says, Vikings fan understandably really want a franchise quarterback after years of journeyman starters, but you can't force it. JJ hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt. No doubt about that. Last year he's earned the doubt, a lot of the doubt. But I think what we've seen from Jared Goff, from Sam Darnold, from Baker Mayfield especially, these guys are similar to Kyler Murray, where they would have been ranked. In fact, Kyler Murray has never been ranked below Sam Darnold. It's never by the NFL executives. Last year, going into the season, Darnold was ranked 20th and Murray was ranked 15th. So we've seen a lot of these talented quarterbacks who bounce around eventually settle into a home as a franchise quarterback somewhere else. I know you want it to be your guy that you drafted, but I remember making somewhat of this argument with Sam Darnold. Like, it doesn't matter where you found him. It only matters that you found him. Brett Favre was an Atlanta Falcon. It doesn't matter if no one in Green Bay says, man, I wish we had drafted Favre, as opposed to him being a Falcon first, right? No one cares. It's like, did you get your guy that was good enough to potentially win with? And I was also looking through something else, which was, where did the NFL executives rank the quarterbacks going into the season when they went to the Super Bowl in the NFC? Which is not dominated anymore by a Rodgers or a Breeze. There really is no true mega elite quarterback in the NFC. And the answer was pretty surprising. When you look at going into those seasons where executives ranked Stafford, they had him as 7th in 2021. None of the other quarterbacks even cracked the top 10 that ended up taking their teams to the Super Bowl. So a lot of times in the National Football Conference, it's been about how good is your team build, how good is your coaching. That's what gets teams deep into the playoffs. The Detroit Lions, their initial team build around Jared Goff is incredible. Chicago did a great job last year of getting the coach that fit with their quarterback, and then the weapons around their quarterback and the offensive line around their quarterback. So the Vikings feel that they have a pretty good setup right now, but is it good enough to get you to the Super Bowl all the way through the playoffs? They certainly have the coaching on the defensive side. I would argue that they have the coaching on the offensive side. Even if it's not perfect, it certainly meets a baseline of coaching. And we've seen that when there's been veteran quarterbacks in there with Kevin O'Connell. So they've got a lot of those boxes checked that are similar to these teams. Even Jalen Hurts had gotten paid, and Brock Purdy had gotten paid by the time that they went, or not Brock Purdy. Purdy got paid after that. But Jalen Hurts, his last time going to the Super Bowl and winning it, he had gotten paid. He was just in the early stages of that contract that didn't have a very high cap hit. Jax Park says, seems like Grenard is setting his contract price too high for the Vikings' potential trade partners. That could definitely be the case. I think that if you're the Vikings, it's a little bit of a dangerous game, because we kind of went through this a few times. Remember with like Hunter, Kyle Rudolph, Anthony Harris, who I think they thought they could tag and trade, and then nobody was making that trade, that they've gotten caught a little bit with, well, we're going to hang on at our price, and we're going to be patient. We're going to wait till somebody panics. And then if nobody panics, where do you end up? But that is the one thing that's for sure driving down the price, is that you don't just give up draft capital for Jonathan Grenard. You also have to redo his contract. And teams don't love doing that unless they really, really, really want the player, or unless they get him for a deal. And my guess is that teams are coming in with third-round picks and saying, well, we've got to take out a lot of money here for you guys. So we're not going to give you huge draft capital for someone who is really good, but is not of the level of like a Myles Garrett. Matt, you got to draft the wide receiver 3. No disagreement there. I am going to be on the side of first, second round draft pick, take a weapon, tight end if it's Sadiq, or wide receiver. I like the idea of a wide receiver, just with Jordan Addison's future being, in my mind, it's up in the air. I don't see his future at all as being settled just because he didn't, go to prison for life for being dragged out of a casino or whatever. It is still, with the issues that he's had off the field, up in the air where things are going to go with Jordan Addison. And then the price tag is also up in the air. Even if Addison catches 70 balls for 900 yards and 10 touchdowns next year, I mean, if he does that, you're talking about a contract extension of what, $30 million per year based on the market prices, based on Alec Pierce, who I don't think is as good as Jordan Addison as a pure wide receiver. He had a better year last year, but just as a pure wide receiver. And Alec Pierce is pushing $30 million per season. I mean, what's Addison going to want? It makes total sense to me to draft a wide receiver very high. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has been a Viking killer for a long time, but is 100. I don't know if, maybe he could still play. Maybe. P3T. Randy Moss said in an interview that he's convinced he could still play till we get a cap discount if we pay him in straight cash. That's very funny. Yeah. Randy, he's one of the greatest of all time, certainly in the top 5 all-time wide receivers. But I think Tennessee Titans Randy Moss would probably be proof that he cannot still play. But man, Randy's so much fun. Every time he talks, Randy is so much fun. John says, doesn't matter. KOC won't be the coach of the Vikings next year anyway. Who cares what he thinks? I think that it's interesting how people, or at least a lot of people, have turned on Kevin O'Connell because, looking at last year as being the coach's fault, I have a tough time with that. Coming off a season where they won 14 games the year before, where things went right and they had a good quarterback, and having it work with Kirk Cousins to go 17-8 in his 25 starts, and then looking at last year as if you didn't know anything about Kevin O'Connell, had never seen him coach before, and saying, no, he stinks. And getting to a winning record at the end of the day, and just saying he should be fired, get him out of here. I don't really understand. I think that, is this just like is this a thing that football fans have always done, or is this a more recent thing where anytime there's a mistake, people want someone fired, or anytime there's a down something, you want something fired? We've got to be smarter than that as a society. I'm not sure that owners are always smarter than that, as you see like Arizona firing a pretty good coach and then having no answer for who their next coach was going to be. And then just sort of, okay, we're going to land on this guy, I guess. So I guess owners do act that way, and probably fans have always wanted their coach fired no matter what. The NBA, the NHL, bad half a season, somebody's out. Championship coaches, just fire them all the time. Is that like just is it an online thing that it's very easy to just type in somewhere like get rid of someone, they're going to be fired and so forth? As of this moment, Kevin O'Connell's history with quarterbacks like this, pretty good. Kirk Cousins, well, his statistics were not way better than we'd ever seen him before. His connection with the locker room, his connection with teammates, his comfort in clutch situations was way different under Kevin O'Connell. And then Sam Darnold, who has clearly proven that a lot of it was Sam Darnold, although he went to Clint Kubiak. So it's not like he went to some bum coach and then made them look brilliant, right? Kubiak and Kevin O'Connell have similarities. I think it was in terms of a passing game, not that wildly different from, it was just that maybe Seattle committed to the run and also could run. The Vikings couldn't run in the second half of 2024 to save their lives. So, that may have played into it as well. But I think when you look at a coach and you start talk about it in the same terms of like checking boxes, can you win with this guy? Until they have, people are going to say you can't, which also goes for quarterbacks as well. But I mean, is this person a good enough leader of your franchise? Does this person create a good enough culture? Do they have a good enough passing game? Because always in the passing game, it's going to be number one for what correlates to success in winning in the postseason is your passing game. Defense will win you a game somewhere, and you need that. You need a good enough defense. And then every time there's a defensive win, people will say defense wins championships. You also need your passing game to beat the Rams in the NFC Championship, as Sam Darnold did, driving that team's success from the quarterback position. So can Kevin O'Connell create a good enough passing game? Can he manage a game well enough? We've seen some ups and downs there. I think the answer is more yes than it is no. But also, like, I mean, it's very hard to win the Super Bowl. It's like, am I going to guarantee that someday he's going to win one? No, but I look at coaching around the league and go, you better be real sure. You better be real sure. And I think what's happened is that the JJ McCarthy supporters, the people who have decided no matter what, hell or high water, no matter what performance, what information, even today, like no matter what, they're just riding it all the way to the end. And that's fine. You can do that. And maybe someday you'll be right. But I also think that because there's not a lot of facts to work with there, it ends up being like create your own and lashing out. And I noticed this from all comment sections where it's like the JJ McCarthy people will just say stuff that isn't even remotely true about Kyler Murray or Kevin O'Connell or whatever that we've dispelled a million times. It's like, it's probably because you don't have a lot to work with in terms of facts. But I think we can keep our rationality here as it pertains to the head coach and talking about, evaluating him and whether you should keep him as a long-term or whatever. I would not put O'Connell on the hot seat. I would certainly put him under pressure though. So it's possible that you end up being right. But with this, if Murray comes here and gives them the caliber of quarterback play he's capable of, then they're going to go forward with him. And they're going to go forward with KOC. Rob says, agree. Kirk was a person of interest. You mean Christian Kirk? I'd still go Greg Dortch. Perfect. Also kick and punt returner. But, I think Miles Price is probably good there. Is it redundant with Miles Price? Like Dortch to me is another undersized, like Brandon Powell type that just doesn't really move the needle a lot. If you had to do it, then you could do it. But it to me doesn't really change much. I mean, I guess like a bit of a playmaker with the ball in his hands, but those guys, they just aren't having a ton of success in the NFL. You're getting like 8 yards per attempt throwing to those players. BM says JJ McCarthy was historically awful prior to the cupcake finish to the season, and he was able to elevate his overall grade to the second worst starter in the league. It's a little on the harsh side there because we can't totally throw out the good moments that McCarthy had. And that includes against the Lions, who are a good team, and it includes against the Bears in the fourth quarter. But when you can only play 10 games in 2 seasons from a health perspective, even if he had been good, then you're still looking at other quarterback options. And then, by the time that they're 4-8, and remember, he didn't even play the Seattle Seahawks. I don't even want to think about what would have happened. Oh, well, I guess we saw it with Max Brosmer. I think it would have been better than what happened with Brosmer, but it would have been gnarly. Considering coming off of that Packers game, he missed the game against the Seahawks. Who even knows what the statistics end up looking like if that happens? But this isn't something that we have to work too hard for. I mean, we all watched what happened. We all saw, even by the end of the season, the injury issues, the performances also against Green Bay and New York. It wasn't like it was spectacular. It was just kind of okay. And the numbers at the end of the day are really bad. And if you're any franchise, you can't just hitch your wagon. No matter how much you like the guy, no matter how much you loved him in the draft, you can't hitch your wagon to that person. So it feels like a lot of McCarthy's super fans are just like gripping onto this and sort of lashing out at everyone around that it's happening, that Kyler Murray is not only their quarterback, but Kevin O'Connell is hinting that he could be the longer term quarterback if this works out. But how would you operate? I mean, no matter how much you love JJ McCarthy, and you totally can, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with believing that he can long-term play in the NFL, that he could someday be a good starter. That's fine. I mean, I held on to Tim Couch when I was a kid for a really long time. I thought that it was the Browns' fault, and it was, and that Couch was eventually going to come back in the NFL and be great. It didn't happen, but I have had this with other quarterbacks too, and sometimes it's actually worked out. Like, I thought Ryan Tannehill got a raw deal with Adam Gase, and it worked out for him eventually. So it's happened enough times that the Baker Mayfield fans, don't give up on your guy. I'm not saying you should, but also you have to put yourself in the shoes of the franchise and go, well, if you were them and you could get someone who's been a top 15 quarterback and that player clicks with your organization and plays really well, like, what would you do? Go back to the person who wasn't even refined enough as a passer to really be starting in the NFL yet? Like, it's a tough ask. So even if, you want to believe in McCarthy, again, that's perfectly fine. But asking the franchise to stick with that when someone of this caliber is available just is unrealistic. Rage says, by any metric you use, JJ was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in 2025. That doesn't necessarily mean he'll always be bad, but there's no sugarcoating how bad he was. Yep, I agree with that. Totally agree with that. You got to live in reality when we're having this conversation. Jack says, saying JJ's 10 starts went bad as they possibly could is insane over-exaggeration. Jack, I mean, well, first of all, over-exaggeration is redundant. So for your future, let me help you. Just say exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. It's the data. There's nothing we can do about it, Jack. We can't help you. We can't change the facts. We can't change what happened. It's just the numbers. It's how the games played out. It was as bad as we've seen from the start of someone's career through their first 6 games and then through their first 5 games. And then down the stretch, it wasn't at all convincing. It was okay against teams that all fired their defensive coordinators or didn't play their starters. But at the end of the day, you just can't have numbers like that. I mean, think about it this way. There are a dozen quarterbacks that have played 10 starts whose teams didn't even think about having them play again that were much better than JJ McCarthy. I'll give you an example. Like, go look up Desmond Ritter's first 10 starts for the Atlanta Falcons. They're much better than JJ McCarthy's. And they were like, no, that's not. Nope, that's not a franchise quarterback. You can make a lot of excuses, but you can't change you can't change what happened. In fact, it's one of the great things about sports is that, well, you can have a lot of different discussions about what could happen in the future and where this thing's going to go and the context of why someone didn't perform at a certain level. What you cannot do is change what happened on the scoreboard. And what happened on the scoreboard is McCarthy ranking 42nd out of 45 quarterbacks in quarterback rating. And even through his first 10 starts, I looked this up the other day. I can actually bring this up in my article the other day. Actually, this will be useful. Give me a second. I'll bring this up in my article to kind of make the point of, like, why would the Vikings do this? Why would they continue, think about, moving on and so forth. Okay, here we go. This is from the Friday mailbag. Feel free to sign up for the newsletter if you want to. purpleinsider.football. All right, so here is the couple of paragraphs from the newsletter and the research that I did about McCarthy. And this is why, again, as the team, you cannot go into this season with him as your only starting quarterback option. And you have to consider Kyler Murray as a potential long-term option. And that it's not ridiculous at all to say to Kyler Murray, hey, man, you could be our guy long-term. This is why. All right, I'm just going to read from this. Out of 113 quarterbacks to throw at least 200 passes in their first 10 starts from 2010, McCarthy is 94th in adjusted net yards per attempt, which factors in sacks and interceptions. Here's the list of guys who were taken between 10th and 64th overall draft picks that rank below 60th on the adjusted net yards per attempt over their first 10 starts. Here's the list. Teddy Bridgewater, who was exactly 60th, Bo Nix, Will Levis, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins, Jake Locker, Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, EJ Manuel, Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Christian Ponder, Josh Rosen, Geno Smith, Deshaun Kaiser, and Jimmy Clausen. And even if we count Bridgewater as a success, that's 5 out of 19 that became anything, and it took Tannehill and Smith a long time. Bridgewater played on a brutal team in 2014, and Derek Carr's Raiders were even worse, and that's it. Not exactly promising. So as we work with the set of facts and projections, which that's what everything is in the NFL when you make moves, it's all projections. Like you're trying to project what Kyler Murray is going to be. And the Vikings can rationally project that Kyler Murray could be a franchise quarterback for them. And the word franchise quarterback, I think, has shifted a little bit because of what we've seen recently in the NFL. I mean, even think about when we talk about, oh, you can't pay anyone. I just think that it's old thinking. I think that we have changed enough as an NFL to where the thinking it is different than it was just a few years ago. Because when the environment changes, we need to also change the way that we evaluate our own opinions as well. Because Trevor Lawrence just won 13 games with the Jacksonville Jaguars. When he got paid, it was like, oh, it's going to be impossible for the Jags to ever win around that contract. And it was not. And there's a lot of guys that have gotten paid and are not even the best of the absolute best. I mean, you could say, well, okay, Stafford has a big contract. He is the MVP. He's the best of the best. But there is a number of other quarterbacks who are on second contracts whose teams have found ways to work around it and still win. Johnny says it's going to be entertaining. Love seeing a DT pass out trying to chase our quarterback. It looks like to me that Vikings fans have broken into sections about Kyler Murray. There is a group who I think is very, very excited. And the funny thing about that I've noticed is that the group who's very, very excited is often people who are much older than me and watched Fran Tarkenton. I've gotten, I don't know how many notes of people like, hey, is this guy kind of like Fran Tarkenton? Like, well, not exactly, because Fran Tarkenton, went to 4 Super Bowls and finished his career basically at the top of the list of everything passing wise of anyone. And Fran was not a prolific runner. He would gain 100, 200 yards a season, but it wasn't like Fran was gaining 1,000 yards or 500 plus yards like Kyler Murray. But when you look at the beginning of Fran Tarkenton's career as a scrambling quarterback, he played for some teams that weren't very good, including the early Vikings teams and then the New York Giants. And it wasn't until the Vikings had a stacked roster around him that he became the great Fran Tarkenton in terms of win-loss. Like, he was always great, but in terms of winning success, did not happen until later in his career. And I think, was he maybe 20, 28, 29 in that ballpark when he first started to have 12-win seasons for the Minnesota Vikings, which no surprise went along with them having Jim Marshall and Alan Page and the Purple People Eaters completely built by then. So even the greatest quarterback in Vikings history would tell you that his supporting cast had a lot to do with why he's in the Hall of Fame and considered one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Patrick says the 27 QB class is stacked. We will see. We'll see if it's stacked. I mean, right now it looks stacked, but we'll see if it's stacked. You never really know. They were completely right about 2024, but they've been wrong about other years that were supposed to have stacked quarterback classes. It's going to matter a lot about how guys play through a year. And then also, someone like Joe Burrow wasn't even considered a prospect and then is suddenly the number 1 pick. How about Mendoza? Did anybody have Mendoza as the top overall draft pick? Probably not. So a lot can change. P3, can we talk about how much I miss Dante Culpepper? He was never the same after the knee thing, but man, he was something when he was healthy. And this is why I have tried to suggest that you sort of strap in for the ride and see what happens with Kyler Murray, because Dante Culpepper also did not win the Super Bowl along with every other person who's ever played for the Minnesota Vikings, has not won it in purple. So the odds are not in Kyler Murray's favor that he's going to win the Super Bowl. But the ability to throw the ball to your number one wide receiver, the playmaking ability, the potential for a really cool story. And I felt like in 2024 that not enough people really latched onto the story until late in the season of Sam Darnold. There was a lot of like, don't play too well, dude. We can't wait for JJ. Like, just don't get in the way of what's supposed to happen here. And of course he did, but like, don't get in the way. Just win 7 or 8 games and get the hell out of here was kind of the vibe. And then when he had some bad games in the middle of the season, it was like, all right, this guy, he's nobody. He can't win. Get him out of here. And I felt like there was far too much of that until late in the season when they beat the Falcons. That's where I felt like it changed with the fan base starting to accept Sam Darnold. This time around, I mean, I just think when you have a quarterback, and Darnold was so much fun watching him throw the football, it's going to be like that, only different. But this is an entertaining football player, and football is an entertainment product. You'd like them to be in a position where you were saying they're going into the season as a favorite. They're not going into this season as 4th out of 4 on FanDuel at plus 600 to win the NFC North. You'd much prefer that JJ McCarthy had become Drake May and that the Vikings were in a Super Bowl window that now extends for the next decade. That is not really on the table at this moment. So could it be fun? Could they potentially be very interesting? Could they win? Could they win the division? Could they be in the playoffs and be relevant and have big games? Yes. And at the moment, that's what you can ask for. So spending the entire offseason and the entire season just sort of pounding the table, they can't win, fire KOC and whatever. I was like, I don't know how you live that way sometimes. I'm not saying that you will be wrong because I don't know how it's going to play out, and neither do you. But I kind of don't know how you live in that world where you're in March with a quarterback who's had some of the moments that Kyler Murray has over his career, and your main disposition is can't wait till the coach is fired. Like that's kind of odd to me. BM says Kyler's going to be in the MVP frontrunner conversation this year. I think that's probably, see, that's what I was talking about the segmenting of fans, where there's a group that has convinced themselves that it's going to be so good that like he's going to be the franchise quarterback and they've got their guy and they've got this, superstar who's going to take them where they want to go. And then I think the majority of people are probably in the bucket of, well, this could be interesting and fun, but it's probably not going to get you there. And then there's this other smaller percentage that can't kind of let go and can't accept what's happened here yet, but maybe that will happen eventually. Coltrane says, come on, Matthew. Funny how everyone forgets how bad our offense as a whole was last season. I guess we put all the blame on Kwesi. Let's pile on JJ. No, I did not put I definitely didn't put all the blame on Kwesi because they had a good enough roster. But if you don't think the quarterback position was responsible for them ranking 28th in the passing game, when the year before they were 6th in expected points added with Sam Darnold, I don't know who you think is responsible. The person who holds the football and throws it to people, that's who I would generally think when you have the same offense. I mean, that's not to say that Kevin O'Connell had nothing to do with their struggles last year offensively. I'm sure at times that he certainly did. And maybe there was, coming into the season, some other way they could have approached it to have less on the plate of JJ McCarthy, maybe from the very beginning, as opposed to later on in the season. Although I'm not convinced against good teams that actually works. I think against really bad teams, you have a few better players than they do and you're fine. And those teams gave up or were firing defensive coordinators or were injured or whatever, and you could get through it. But even then, the numbers weren't that special. I mean, they're just okay against, the tomato cans that they played at the end of the season. They're fine, but they're not the 350-yard performances or something that we see star quarterbacks put up. Everyone is to blame for what happened. And with Kevin O'Connell, it's more of letting go Sam Darnold. It's like, let's blame people for the right things. If you want to point a finger, how about letting go Sam Darnold is the thing to point the finger for? It's not to say that he was the reason JJ McCarthy couldn't hit open wide receivers. And one of the stats that I think is the most demonstrative of what happened last year is that the completion percentage, the expected completion percentage, this is a NFL next gen statistic, is expected completion percentage. The expected completion percentage for Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy was exactly the same. But McCarthy was 5% underneath it and Sam Darnold was above it. And that's how you end up with the performance that those two had, is the wide receivers were the same amount open that they were targeting. And yet Darnold hit them and JJ McCarthy didn't. And I don't know what you're supposed to do from the sideline as, you know, Kevin O'Connell when your quarterback cannot hit open wide receivers, which happened most of the season. And not only that, 27 sacks when you only threw 243 passes is a freaking insane amount of sacks to take. That to go along with double-digit interceptions, which you shouldn't have double-digit interceptions in the NFL in 500 passes, much less 243. Once you start adding all of these things up, and then you look at how Darnold performed, how even Mullins performed, how Kirk Cousins performed in this same offense with this same coach, it just defies any sort of logic, which you're allowed to do in forming your opinion, but it defies any sort of logic that I tend to work inside the constraints of to say that it was all the coach's fault. John says, I love the idea of mobile quarterbacks. Our history was built on it. Tarkington, Cunningham, and Culpepper. Well, I'm in complete agreement with you there, John, because, you know, I look back at a lot of quarterbacks that I was in favor of, whether it's for the Vikings or, you know, just in general, because of growing up watching Cunningham, Steve Young, Steve McNair, quarterbacks like that, even to some extent, Michael Vick. I was in like high school when Mike Vick was playing. And I mean, just guys who can turn nothing into something. And Kyler is one of those guys. He doesn't quite do it at the same level that he did early in his career or as often as he did early in his career. But there are plays where it is just shocking how he could escape or even just make a play off schedule. So he was able to make in the New Orleans game last year, a couple of plays off schedule where the protection breaks down instantly. And then all of a sudden he's out and he's making a play and finds Trey McBride down the field. Like that is something that was really a struggle when they had Kirk Cousins. And no matter how many times I say it, people will still leave in the comments, you hate Kirk or whatever. Okay, whatever, fine. Any objective analysis of any player always results in people saying that you hate them. So I guess I shouldn't worry about that. But with Kirk, one of the issues was if your offensive line loses, you lose. And this is the same issue that Jared Goff has. And what the Vikings took advantage of last year to beat Jared Goff twice was if your offensive line loses, you lose. There were very few games that the Vikings won in the Kirk era where they got beat in the trenches. There are games for the very mediocre, if not bad, Arizona Cardinals where their offensive line doesn't play that well, or they allow free runners at Kyler Murray and he just makes a play. There's a play, and I will do. I've collected the clips from his 2025, and we'll get into that at some point and do some film later in the week. But there's a play against the Saints where there's an edge rusher who they forget to block entirely, and Kyler sort of takes one step up the field. The guy chases him, and then he swoops back around him and runs for a big gain. There's a play against the Panthers where they send a free running linebacker. Their blocker doesn't get over to get him. The guy is 2 inches from the face of Kyler Murray when he gets the snap in his hands, and Murray turns it into a 30-yard gain. I mean, there are things that running quarterbacks can do that add value. And that's why when I looked at one of the more interesting stats that I looked at with Kyler Murray was approximate value from Pro Football Reference, because that adds up. It's like a wins above replacement stat. It adds the rushing into it. So it's not just the passing, but it adds in the rushing. And Murray was in the top 10 most valuable quarterbacks from 2020 to 2024 because That's an additional, I think in 2024, he had 27 first downs or something. In the first 5 games of last year, he had 10 additional rushing first downs. And those aren't QB sneaks like they are for Jalen Hurts or something. So that's a lot of extra drives that stay alive because of this guy. And it's also a lot of fun. P3 regarding JJ McCarthy. I think Matthew nailed it. Thank you. Before, when he mentioned the fact that McCarthy never experienced failure and didn't know how to handle it, there was no way to predict that. I 100% agree with that. The NFL is not something that you can prepare yourself for mentally, because the strain, it's kind of like this. Think about, let's say that you're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I read an article about how a lot of people want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and a lot of them are definitely not prepared to be able to do this. And they are just brought down the mountain in a wheelbarrow, basically. And one of the things is, if you want to climb an actual mountain, how do you get ready to do that? I don't know, like use a Stairmaster, you go into a really tall building downtown and you climb the stairs over and over and over again or something. You work out. You work on your breathing. I don't know. I've never climbed a mountain. I promise you I will never try it. But you cannot prepare yourself for what it's like to actually climb that mountain. And I think of that, I look at the NFL like it's the same thing. You cannot prepare yourself, if you've never done it before, for what it's like to climb that mountain, to deal with the amount of hits that you take. They're different than college hits. To deal with the amount of pressure, it's different than college pressure. And really, there was no pressure at Michigan other than, there's a couple of games that you could point to, but how many games? Alabama, he played well, for sure. He played really well in Alabama in his second to last game that got them to the national championship. There was a lot on JJ McCarthy. There's a game against Ohio State that tends to mean a lot to Michigan people, but that's kind of it though. His junior year, what they lost to was a TCU where they got beat pretty badly. Look, there just hadn't been a lot of those NFL type moments. And even the ones that are there are not like the NFL, because you don't have a locker room of 20 guys who are in their primes and are making a lot of money and have families and everything else who are looking over at you. You're going to dictate what happens with my career and my success in the NFL and my happiness and so forth. You have the best wide receiver on earth who had more catches through the first 5 years and more yardage through the first 5 years than anybody else in NFL history, and you can't find him. Imagine what that feels like. You can't simulate what that feels like trying to work your way through that. And then it's probably hard to simulate what it feels like when you succeed and being, the king of the mountain too, when you have it work out in the NFL, because I don't know that he handled that the best either. After winning the game against the Lions, that's great, but you got to just be ready for the next week and the next game. So that takes time and it takes growth. And Kyler Murray is also, along with Baker Mayfield, I think from a personality perspective, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray are success stories of maybe the NFL was a little volatile for them and they didn't handle everything the right way early on and then grew from that. I think Murray is, if you do any research about his connection with Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon, but Baker Mayfield definitely is. He's found his real home in Tampa Bay. It took time to do that for a little different reason than JJ McCarthy, but it takes time. So you can't ever really know. And this is what the Vikings underestimated. They thought, we'll be here for him. He'll have all this leadership. He'll have all these other good players around him. He'll have good coaches. McCown's been through everything. But even then, you can't put him in a bubble, and emotionally, you can't control that. You can control a lot of stuff as a coach. You can't control the emotions of the player. So that's why I just think that he needs more time, but you can't rewrite what happened last year. You can certainly argue that more time and the calluses that are built from what happened last year could result in being the best thing for JJ McCarthy, but you can't rewrite what happened last season. It was very, very rough. And the quarterbacks, I read you their names. It's not a lot of quarterbacks who have ended up working out after they had a start like this. Rob Dortch was Kyler's outlet with the Cards. Yeah. And he shouldn't cost a lot. I have no problem if they get him. I was thinking for a wide receiver 3, maybe someone who has a little more capability of being a deep threat, since that's what Jalen Naylor was. Clifford said, not if they're talking about Kyler being the long-term answer. He's toast in Minnesota. You're talking about Kevin O'Connell? I mean, that's kind of odd because Sam Darnold wasn't even supposed to be able to do anything as the starter. He wasn't, when he signed, according to a lot of people, he wasn't even supposed to be able to win the job. So writing it in right now, what you think is going to happen, I think is a little bit silly. Truly, we're talking about range of outcomes, but what you think is going to happen. I think that O'Connell's track record, and maybe this is what scares some of you as big JJ people, is that Kevin O'Connell's track record points to this working, and so does Justin Jefferson's. So if you really disdain Kyler Murray and you really love JJ McCarthy, this probably doesn't feel like a good day for you because I think the odds are in their favor. When when Kyler Murray's had good situations, he's played really well in the NFL. He hasn't been perfect, but he's played very well, and he's going to have a good situation here. He also, I also think that people need to see him play. You need to, because most of the commenters, you just need to see him actually play in some of these games. You need to see the wow plays. You need to see the accuracy. You need to see how he worked the ball to his number one target, Trey McBride. And as I joked with a friend about like watching the tape back, and I just said, I mean, it doesn't even look like the same sport compared to what we saw from McCarthy last year. Like, he's doing so many of the routine things routinely, which is throw on time, throw accurately over the middle of the field, which I don't know where that came. When I asked Josh Weinfuss about that, who covered him, I said, was there an issue with throwing over the middle of the field? His answer was like, what are you talking about? No. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, and by the data, there really isn't. It just doesn't show up. So, but timing to like your tight end on a check down, or even just getting to a check down, which JJ McCarthy struggled with, it's night and day. It's not really particularly close. So I think what some of you are, it's very similar to Darnold. I think what some of you are actually afraid of is it working, because if it works and it doesn't win you a Super Bowl, then I'm sure we'll hear from all the same people like, I told you it wasn't going to work because they didn't win the Super Bowl, which is, again, not a way that I would want to live. That's a way you can live if you want to. That's just not, that doesn't sound like football is very fun to you, that you live and die on certain takes and you just hope and dream that they're going to be right. And if it's right, then you've had a good time. And if it's wrong that you haven't, that just sounds twisted to me. So I'm not really thinking about this the same way as some of you, but I think if we're talking about what are the odds, we should get there. What are the odds that Kyler Murray becomes the quarterback for longer than this year? I mean, I'd put it after this with Albert Breer's report, I'd probably put it about a coin flip. And should you be rooting for it? That we're going to find out, because if you do get stuck in middle land, and that's the biggest concern here, is that you do get stuck in middle land and you do struggle to build the roster around Kyler Murray to be good enough, and you end up similar, I guess, ish to the Cardinals in some ways, like not totally because their franchise is awful, but like, at least in some ways of not feeling like you could get over the top. Now that's not a great place to be if you're just going to be competitive and it's just going to be fun over multiple seasons and that's all you could ever be. But what are the odds that this works and he plays well and he fits with Jefferson and he is exciting and all that? I mean, they're decent. It's not 100%, but it's decent. And of all the options, the reason why I like the Kyler Murray one the best was exactly what KOC said. Interesting. That's exactly what KOC said, was that one of the reasons I liked it is because this could actually be a long-term option. This could actually work. The ceiling for this is that this doesn't just work, but it works over multiple years. That was not on the table at all for Kirk Cousins. That was not on the table at all for Geno Smith or Aaron Rodgers. Those guys were, as Albert Breer wrote, those were Band-Aids. Slim Bo Boogie, if Kyler stays healthy and plays 17 games, expect 3,900 yards passing, 625 rushing, 30 total touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Now, you may be saying, if you're against the move, Oh, Mr. Slim Boogie, what are you, out of your mind? But Mr. Boogie is really just giving the stat line for Kyler Murray from 2024, or close to it, where he threw for 3,800 yards, had 24 passing and 5 rushing, so 29 touchdowns. I think he had, was it 10 interceptions, and ran for 500 yards. So he's already done that recently. Skull Shadow, the NFLPA should allow teams to work with their players more during the offseason, especially for developing players. Don't they want a better product? Allowing more practice equals better games. Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because if you're the players, what you want is less wear and tear on your body, less time that you have to fly from wherever you live. I thought this was really funny. Micah Parsons was being like made fun of for spending time in his home in Dallas during the offseason. It was like, have you seen our weather? I wish I was with Micah Parsons in Dallas as well over the last week. But players, they all have to fly in, be away from their families for OTAs and practice and stuff like that. So they want less of that. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, there used to be avenues for quarterback development. And this is where, when we talk about JJ McCarthy's results, that isn't to say that circumstances didn't play into it. It did. Circumstances played into it for sure. Coming off of the injury, not having that first year to develop, the system and the way it's set up to really panic over a rookie quarterback contract, which is what this organization did. They figured, we got to make this happen in his rookie quarterback contract. So we're going to make a move where the odds are not that great that it actually works, but we've got to take our big swing and move on from somebody who just performed at a Pro Bowl type of level because he's in his rookie quarterback contract. It didn't used to be that way. So you have a bunch of things that used to be in favor of quarterbacks for development. Number one is that teams knew you needed to develop a quarterback, so they were more patient with them. Number two, they used to keep 3 quarterbacks on their roster. You used to have guys, or 3 or 4 or whatever it was, practice squad quarterbacks. So you used to have guys get, more reps and more time over a number of years as a backup quarterback. There used to be NFL Europe, where there's a number of quarterbacks who ended up playing in the NFL that would go over to NFL Europe in the offseason. JT O'Sullivan, who does the great QB school, he was one of them. He played over in NFL Europe. And I remember listening to old broadcasts, and I'll still do this, I'll still catch this, where you'll hear the broadcaster say, he spent last year with the Barcelona Dragons or the Rhine Fire of but they don't do this with the USFL. And they used to have 2-a-day practices where you're getting a lot more reps, you're dropping back a lot more. And it's not a fair situation for JJ McCarthy. Unfortunately, it just isn't. In a fair world, he would have been healthy for his first year and sat behind Sam Darnold. And in a fair world, he would have built on everything that he started out with camp, where he impressed everyone so much, and probably been a lot more ready physically and emotionally to start for the Vikings last year. In a perfect world, Sam Darnold wins 8 games, and the bar isn't that high. And if he wins 9 or 10 and has some struggles, you'd feel good about it. You'd say they made progress. They were better as a roster. See, but he won 14. And that set a different sort of standard. In a perfect world, he plays 17 games, and we can really look at 600 or 700 passes to say, wow, this is what JJ really is, as opposed to a half a season basically played and worth of it's not even a half a season worth of passes. It's a half a season worth of starts. It's not a half a season worth of passes. 243, double that. That's 486. You're not even, most quarterbacks are getting over 500 passes in a season. So it's not a fair world for JJ McCarthy. And if they did allow for more of the coaches with players in the offseason, maybe that would help with somebody like him and with younger players' development. But I will go back to what I asked Kirk Cousins about development, quarterback development. And he said, you better develop yourself. That's what he said. And that really stuck with me. Really stuck with me, that he said, you really, in the NFL, you have to develop yourself. So it's on JJ McCarthy. And if McCarthy is somehow better than Kyler Murray, then this conversation goes out the window. And that's why I think the people who are freaking out today, who want McCarthy to be the starter over O'Connell, saying, I could see you being the long-term guy. Well, first, it's just logical. It's just logical. If you have a quarterback of this much talent and previous performances that have peaked at an 11-win season and a top 10 offense, yeah, of course, at 28 years old, sure, he could be the long-term option. But we don't really know where this thing is going to go, and it's on the shoulders of J.J. McCarthy to get to the point where he can compete with Kyler Murray. Because right now, having watched a lot of J.J. McCarthy and now just recently watched a lot of Kyler Murray, my assessment is it ain't close, folks. It ain't remotely close between these two quarterbacks. Kyler Murray is much, 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 much better than J.J. McCarthy right now. That does not mean J.J. McCarthy cannot get there. That means at this moment, a 28-year-old who's been in the NFL a long time, who's been through a lot of different stuff in the league, has changed offenses, has had lots of different supporting casts. He knows a lot more. He's grown a lot more, and he's a number 1 overall draft pick. More playmaking skill there, certainly more natural accuracy as a thrower, a guy who could have been in Major League Baseball, like a special athletic talent to even be here at this height. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how special you have to be here at this height? So right now there's no competition between the two if you watch them, but that doesn't mean that McCarthy can't develop himself and make a case. And it just with Murray and his health situation over his career, it doesn't mean that we won't see J.J. McCarthy this year. Now, it did get brought up that, maybe with this coming out, like, should they just trade him? I have not. Oh, that's interesting, Daver, that the Cards offense outgained the Vikings in 2024. 2024 Cardinals offense with Murray leading the way is a good offense, and he was a good quarterback. Like, there's no way around that. They went 8-9. They had a mediocre coach in terms of in-game management that cost them a couple games, and they did not have a great defense, and they let some get away. But they were a pretty competitive and solid football team on offense with not a very good. I'm curious, actually. I wonder about this. Where they ranked in offensive line on 2024. Maybe it was okay. No, it was pretty good. Yeah. So there you go. That it may have been a factor that helped them a lot with Kyler Murray and some of his success. So we all know this too. We know this. The Vikings have to get the other things right. They have to block. They have to run. They have to catch the ball this time. The scheme's got to work. We know that. In terms of the trade J.J. McCarthy idea, I don't think that there's a big rush that you have to do that today just because you said in an article or it came out that you said, however it got there, that Murray could be the long-term guy. That doesn't mean you have to trade J.J. McCarthy. Now, if McCarthy goes to the Vikings and demands a trade, then you might be in a little different spot. But if you're the Vikings, don't you want J.J. McCarthy as your backup? Don't you want someone who knows the offense at least enough and is expected to know it more than he did last year, knows the offense and can win some games with his playmaking if Kyler Murray were to go down. So I don't see any reason to trade J.J. McCarthy right now unless someone came in with any sort of phenomenal offer. A first-round pick or something like that. Okay, well, maybe you start to consider it. Or if he's demanding a trade and he's saying, I'm not going to show up to OT, it's not happening, I don't think. But if it was behind the scenes, then you'd have to consider it. If it's not, and McCarthy's being told you're going to come in and compete with Kyler Murray, then all right, well, having him as a backup's pretty darn good because he played like a high-quality backup last year and was able to win a handful of games. So you'd rather have that because if you got through 7 games into the season, and let's say you're 5-2 with Kyler Murray, and then he goes down for the year or something, well, you want someone to come in and be able to still start. Cobra Kai says, to follow tradition, Kyler will sign a deal with the Vikings after the season simply because Minnesota doesn't have a viable option moving forward. I do not agree with that. I think that the only reason they would sign him is if he met the boxes that were checked that I brought up earlier. And if he met those requirements, if he stayed healthy, if they won as a team, if he connected with Kevin O'Connell, if he connected with Justin Jefferson, and they were able to produce a top 10 offense, then you're signing him. I think if it's short of that, if the connection's just okay between him and O'Connell and Jefferson, if they win 8 games, if You're the 18th best offense. I don't think you're signing him. I don't think it's just because they have no other option. Clearly they can find other options, seeing as they got Darnold and then got Kyler Murray, and someone else will be available next year. There was 5 quarterbacks who can start in the NFL available this year. There probably will be next year as well. So I don't see it that way. I think the bar is high, and at least if some people are right about the draft class, then you might have a good draft class to work with as well. Norse Force says it worked out great. It was all God's plan. I'd rather have Kyler than Darnold. That's a little bit of a weird take since Darnold won the Super Bowl this year, but I think Darnold was the perfect fit for Kevin O'Connell. I really think he was. He was mobile enough to gain some first downs if things went crazy. He could line up under center, run play actions and boots and stuff like that, but he could do anything that you needed him to do with his arm talent. And this offense, and this has been asked, and I wanted to get to this, like what kind of adjustments they need to make. I think one of them is that Sam Darnold could tune that ball up and throw it like a freaking howitzer into windows that you would not suggest for most quarterbacks. What I saw from Kyler Murray last year was when he was asked to put touch on the ball, he was phenomenal. I mean, the touch that this guy has is special. Truly special. How can I describe this? If you have like a garbage bin 25 yards down the field and you are telling Kyler Murray, drop it in that bucket, that he could just do it time and time again. He's that accurate with his touch. But when he was winding up and whipping it, so like an outfielder, like throwing to home or whatever, or a shortstop in the hole, like really letting it rip, it was not the same in terms of accuracy as it was when he was putting touch on the ball. So how do you work with that? I think that that's really one of the things they have to go with is with Darnold, you can say, all right, they have like a number system, a 1, 2, 3. I forget how it works exactly with the different types of throws that you make as quarterback. So is this a 1 where you whip it in there, a 2 where you put a little touch on it, or a 3 where you're really floating it into a spot? I think that the 2 and 3 for Kyler Murray are phenomenal, and the 1 is not where it's as accurate. I don't know if that's how they do it exactly. But I know that they have that. They've brought it up before. And that's where McCarthy was throwing all 1s and not enough 2s and 3s, right? So can you work with that, or can you get him to be accurate with, throwing the ball into tighter windows as hard as he needs to throw it? Though, because I think maybe part of that is that he's always thrown over the offensive line. So you're putting touch on the ball and you're gliding it up over the offensive line. Its trajectory starts up higher. That's how he's used to throwing. Maybe a little bit less than I'm going to huck this thing 110 miles an hour. So that'll be interesting there. D Vegas says if KOC doesn't change his play calling and preparing for games, he definitely needs to be fired. Again, why are we talking about firing the coach on March 16th? It's just, what are we doing here? Like, we don't need to, everything doesn't need to be someone that has to be fired. Like, it just doesn't. We don't have to talk about that way all the time. In terms of the play calling, like when you say if he doesn't change his play calling, I don't really know what that means. I feel like when people say that, they're very vague about it. Like, just call the plays that work. Okay. In my mind, it's fitting to what Kyler Murray feels most comfortable with and then pushing him into some areas that will work that maybe he hasn't done before. But when you actually look at the offense that he was running in Arizona, and I saw Ted Wynn of The Athletic tweet this out, it's not crazy different. There is a lot of pre-snap motion stuff that they do. There's a lot of timing motion stuff that Kyler Murray was asked to do. There are a lot of downfield concepts. They ran a lot of 4 vertical type stuff that then he often would dump it down to somebody underneath because the defense gets pushed back. There are a lot of timing type throws of a slant to, Marvin Harrison Jr. or something. It's step back, hit the back foot, hit him. There are some dig routes over the middle where it's step back, guys into his break, gets behind the linebacker, put it into a spot to get him. I mean, are you referring to just like the running on third down, or what are we talking about with play calling? Like, I kind of need to know the specific area I'm supposed to address, or he needs to address, or he's going to get fired according to you. But like, is it, I mean, the third and short stuff is an abomination over his time here, and that needs to be a heck of a lot better. That definitely needs to improve. I think last year, if he didn't learn that you can just lean on a guy like Jordan Mason on third down and short, then he missed the boat, because he should be able to do that when it's those short yardage situations, like get your first downs, move forward. Maybe there's like a safer play calling that is not, it doesn't always have to be the dagger. There were too many times, in 2024 and even a little bit this year where it felt like if you just play it on a little bit on the safer side, you're probably going to win this, or this is going to work for you. But it was like he couldn't do that forever. Like, okay, we've only gotten so far with this run stuff, but now I gotta, but here's the thing. If you're mostly focused on, well, they have to run more, I get it. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I agree. More successfully, at least, but even more often is probably right. With Carson Wentz, you just can't have Carson Wentz. This is the difference, though. You can't have Josh Dobbs and Carson Wentz out there throwing 35 to 40 passes, but you can have Kyler Murray out there doing it. I mean, so there is a big difference. You can have Sam Darnold out there doing it. You can have Kirk Cousins. What you'd like is for sense the moment with those guys, and he really did this against the Lions. It took Max Brosmer being out there to do it. Like, sense that you're winning this game if you just kind of grind the other team into the ground rather than going for the throat all the time. There's some of that. But in terms of like changing the play calling is just so vague. I mean, I don't really know. I think of change it in terms of you can't ask Kyler Murray. This is my biggest thing. You can't ask Kyler Murray to stand tall in the pocket. He is not tall. I think we know that. And identify 1 to 2 to 3 and wait and hang on to the ball. And hey, if you get back to this, it's going to flash open and then fire it into that little gap. Sam Darnold was kind of insane, and still is, about just hanging in the pocket. That guy will take any hit anytime. He is very big. I know he's maybe 6'3", but in terms of his size, Sam Darnold is a linebacker. If you were just walking into a locker room and you didn't know who anybody was, or you didn't see their nameplates with their positions or anything else like that, you might not know that Sam Darnold was a quarterback. You might think he was like a strong safety or a linebacker or something, the way he's built, because he's so strong and he could take those hits. I don't think you want Kyler Murray hanging in there and taking those hits. I think you want the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. And if that is also downfield, where you're throwing a slot fade to Justin Jefferson or something like that, down the sideline to Jordan Addison, that's fine. But don't make him hang in and go 1 to 2 to 3 to 1. Get it to have it set up so if he has something open right away, bang. And if it's not there, then there's TJ Hockenson or there's Aaron Jones. I think it's a good reason to keep Aaron Jones. So, that's an interesting stat from Slim Boogie there, that they averaged 24 points a game during his career, and he's only 38 and 48. They've never had a top 10 defense the entire time he was there. It's not a good team. It's not a good team. Roger says, if we're talking about, Ed Donatel, that's kind of with KOC, like, yeah, he should have fired Ed Donatel midway through the season. We're going back a little ways there, though. Roger, in year 5, O'Connell needs to win. He had better change or he should be gone. Well, this is the rule of the show. If you're going to say stuff like that, you got to tell me what. Kevin O'Connell needs to do X better, but you have to say what it is. Like, he needs to call plays better. What plays would you like? Like, tell me what your feedback actually is. Like, he's got to do something better. Like, well, what is it? Like, what is it that when you're making that comment, like, what is it that you're thinking? Because this is what I do here, which is to pick apart every single element of this team every day during the season, and hear every single game, watch back on tape and break down with all the data and everything else. So there's a lot to talk about, but these sort of vague, hey, like, you just got to better. Like, I don't know what to do with that. In terms of being year 5 though, and it does linger over Kevin O'Connell, there's no doubt about it. And that they have not won in the playoffs, and it does linger over him that they moved on from Sam Darnold. 100%. There's no way around that. And I mentioned this, I think, after Darnold won the Super Bowl, that it reminds me a little bit of Pete Carroll not giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch. That while the Seattle Seahawks were still able to have some success and they were able to move on, it lingered. It just stayed there. And the same thing is this, like, this was the team that decided that Sam Darnold wasn't good enough to win the Super Bowl with, and then someone else won the Super Bowl with him. So that is something that's hard to move on from as a locker room, unless you immediately have success with Kyler Murray. And then you go, well, hey, all's well that ends well. But if the team starts out 1-3, then you can bet they're going to be looking over at Seattle. Well, what's their record? What are they, what are they doing? Is Seattle winning again with Sam Darnold, the guy that we let go of? Like that stuff happens. You think it only happens on Twitter and comment sections. It happens within NFL buildings too, where people start looking around and be like, hey, wait a minute. Why did we get rid of Sam Darnold? Whose fault was that again? So, and there's a little bit of that even in Tyler Dunn's piece that wrote about Sam Darnold and the Vikings moving on from him and Harrison Smith and Blake Cashman. They don't say it implicitly, but it's between the lines everywhere of like, why did we do that again? So when you've got that much questioning because you botched a decision of that magnitude, the pressure is absolutely on. I agree with that. I think when it comes to Kevin O'Connell, when you talk about the long term, what you should be rooting for if you're a Vikings fan, what you should be hoping for is that the boxes get checked and that O'Connell shows again that he could be that guy that can maximize Justin Jefferson and that can win a lot of games with a quarterback that has been flawed, and on and on and on. Because the alternative, well, it is so much fun to fire someone. It feels really good in sports to just be like, it's your fault. You're out of here. On to the new. The new is always better. What's the Family Guy thing of like, what's in the box? I hope it's a box. Like, I hope the next head coach can be voted an A from his players all the time and have double-digit wins and have top passing games when he has good quarterback play. Oh, wait, that's kind of what you have in Kevin O'Connell. And sometimes chasing perfection can be the enemy of good, right? You've probably heard that. And I also think, too, that Kevin O'Connell's not 70, that a lot of coaches have gotten better as they've moved on and up and improved over time. You'd much rather, as a fan of the franchise, assuming that you are in the comment section. Sometimes we get Packers fans who come in and want to troll. But if you are a fan of the franchise, you'd much rather find your quarterback that you know can win, keep Justin Jefferson long-term, have a coach that you know can win and get you to the playoffs and put you in the driver's seat to have a chance to do something in the postseason, then you would have this all go to hell and have no idea what comes next. Because what's behind door number 2 sometimes works, and sometimes it's Matt Patricia. Like sometimes you get rid of Jim Caldwell if you're the Detroit Lions because you think, well, this guy's not good enough. He can't get us over the hump. And you end up with Matt Patricia, who implodes your franchise for a long time. So it's not always better on the other side of the fence. I just caution people for that. I'm not saying that there might not be a scenario. There might be. There might be a scenario where you go, all right, the wheels came off. He lost his mind. That happened with Joe Judge with the New York Giants. I think they had told him that he was going to be fine. And then he went completely crazy and they got blown out in a bunch of games. They're like, all right, well, it's time to move on from that. But the Packers are doing this with Matt LaFleur too. When you reach a certain standard of coaching, look at how many coaches get fired every year. It's hard to reach that standard. You'd much prefer you grow with this flawed coach right now than you would go back into the market. I mean, a team just hired Mike McCarthy again. A credible NFL franchise just hired Mike McCarthy again. And you think, yeah, man, I definitely want to go into that coaching market and see what the hell happens. I don't know, dude. I don't know. 1 year ago were like, yeah, I mean, O'Connell's the coach of the year. He's the quarterback whisperer 1 year ago. TJ said, I keep seeing people say KOC needs to adapt to Murray, but we should get players to build around him. Shouldn't have to be done. Shouldn't we have done that with JJ? Well, they did what they could with JJ McCarthy. They did what they could. They did adjust the offense significantly. They started running on first and second down more. They started putting in big personnel more. They tried to make that as safe of an offense. They stopped doing the timing motion, which is something that Murray easily executed in Arizona all the time, by the way. And most quarterbacks can, but McCarthy wasn't ready to do it. I didn't see any time where the team had 8 false starts when I was watching Murray tape. But, I guess that's all O'Connell's fault too. But I mean, look, with last year, you can relitigate it any way you want. You can blame O'Connell all you want. The facts are the facts. And even if you think that JJ McCarthy's failure was nothing to do with him, it was entirely that the offense wasn't built enough for him, which is to me just crazy talk. But like, okay, sure. If you want to think that, okay. The fact that he had a 50 quarterback rating trying to throw to Justin Jefferson to me is a bit of a smoking gun. But if you want to say that, then all right. But here's the problem with that. If he can't build an offense for JJ McCarthy, who can't execute short game at all and got sacked constantly and turned the ball over all the time, if he can't build the offense somehow with magic dust for a quarterback that was struggling with that many different things, then you wouldn't ask him to go forward with that quarterback. You would ask him to try it with somebody else when he's proven before that he can have it work with other people. And when it comes to adjusting it to Kyler Murray, it's way easier. This is a very key point. Even if I agreed with you that he couldn't adjust it to JJ McCarthy, it's way easier to adjust an offense to a quarterback who knows what they're doing than it is to adjust it to one who doesn't. Because instead of paring down certain things that veteran quarterback isn't as good at or is better at and adding those things, this is fundamental stuff. Get the team lined up, take the snap, throw to a wide open wide receiver on a 3-step drop. I don't know what offense you just makes that work if that wasn't being executed. It's much easier to have a Sam Darnold or a Kirk Cousins or a Kyler Murray who can do the fundamental stuff that you're going to ask. And here's the other thing too. These offenses in the NFL, man, they are not that different. They are just not that different. When it comes to, so Steven, that number is just not really, I don't think, a very good one with the under center. I don't know where you got that number, but if you go to 2024 and add up the percentage of passes that Kyler Murray ran under center, not runs, but passes, because their run game, I think, was a lot out of the shotgun for Arizona. The pass percentage was, I believe, 22% for Kyler Murray in 2024, and it was 27% for Sam Darnold. Also, Kirk Cousins was and Sam Darnold were out of the shotgun all the time under KOC's offense. D Vega, you get the award for the most clueless comment of the day. You try to sugarcoat things because you work for the Vikings organization. You might want to Google first before you say something like that. I mean, I guess this is I don't know. What is this? The lashing out of like, we're just making stuff up about everything now. I do not in any way, shape, or form, and never have worked for the Minnesota Vikings organization. If you'd like to know the background of Purple Insider, I'll give it to you. I was working in Buffalo at WGR 550, sports radio station there, for 5 years. And then I was hired by a radio station in Minnesota called 1500 ESPN, or ESPN Twin Cities. Either one works. Where I worked for, how many years was that? 4 years. And I had a daily show, and I covered the Vikings as a reporter, digital reporter, and then started doing my own show. And then when COVID happened, they shut down that radio station, and there are some remnants of that still exist now, but maybe even another podcast that that used to be my show. So that happened, and then I started Purple Insider. So that's how I got here. And the Vikings were kind enough to continue my press credential that worked for me when I was working for the ESPN radio station when I started this. So there's the whole story. They have not, I've never taken a single dollar, a single dime from the Vikings organization. However, I have taken lunch. I got to admit it, guys. I have eaten lunch. And in the press box, breakfast. So they bring pizza sometimes after the game, after most games, actually, home games. And I've eaten it. So in that way, you could almost say a literal sugar coating depending on the meal. If it was like pancakes, a literal sugar coating could be possible. But I think that, which is also funny too, because my reputation initially was being very harsh and critical, because in Buffalo, it's a little bit of a different media market in the East. But what I try to do here is, as best I possibly can, work with all of the facts and organize them into, well, what do I think about any situation, and what are the range of outcomes? See, what I do a little bit differently, because my background is as a reporter, and you can see I wrote this book here as well. As a reporter, is rather than, I'm not a TV person, so I'm not going to go on Fox Sports or something on TV, FS1, and give you, this is what's going to happen in this game. This team's going to win the Super Bowl. This team made the best move of the offseason. This team made the worst move of the offseason. I'm staking my claim, right? That's just not how I do it. I think of everything because, see the book? It's called Football's a Numbers Game. It's a lot about the data revolution in the NFL. I've always been very, very interested in data. So that's how my brain works. My brain works in percentage chances of stuff. So if we look at the data, and you could say, well, that's, data's not perfect and you should watch the game. Well, I also broke down a bunch of Kyler Murray film on the newsletter today. If you would like that, purpleinsider.football. So I try to pair it all together, which is the data and being in the locker room and going to the owners' meetings, which I'm headed to in a couple weeks, or the combine, or every single home game, or a sampling of road games, depending on how things are going. Sometimes that's bigger or smaller, depending on the season. Every press conference, all those sorts of things. And then talking to people that over the last 10 years around the NFL that I have gotten to know. And what I try to do is I gather a big old bucket of information and I try to distill it into what the odds are of certain things and where I think they're going. Now, I may or may not have mentioned the Kyler Murray idea a month ago on the show because of all of that stuff. Sort of put it all together. What have I heard, and what do I see in the numbers, and what do I see or what do I hear from O'Connell and from the team? And I thought there's only one guy that really makes sense for them, and that is Kyler Murray. Because of what? Let's tie it all back in. Kyler Murray has the chance to be the longer-term quarterback. And if you get to year 2 of a quarterback you drafted and the head coach of the team will not commit to that person as their starting quarterback, the odds are not high of that person continuing to go on to be their quarterback. It's just not. When you get not a no confidence vote, but not a vote of confidence. So somewhere in between, it was, well, we definitely want a different quarterback. To use my connections to get Josh Allen. Somebody used connections to get Buffalo Wings out here. That's what I want. So anyway, the whole point is that everything is odds for me. It's odds that someone performed at the level that JJ McCarthy did. It's history. 5 of the 19 quarterbacks that performed like him in their first 10 games ended up having any level of success. 5. That's 25%, 5-ish, 20, about 1 out of every 5 out of 19. And Bridgewater was like, who knows what would have happened. I was even counting Bridgewater as a success. If you don't, then it would be 4. So that's a quarter of the people that have had this type of success have ended up working out. So that's not very high, which means you need to go out and you need to find somebody else who has the potential to be your starting quarterback. And now when I do all the research on Kyler Murray and talk to the people who covered Kyler and look at all the numbers and watch all the tape, my conclusion is that this is not a perfect quarterback. You didn't just acquire Josh Allen, but you acquired somebody who could do this, who can run this offense and who can make plays and who can make accurate throws and who can work the ball to Jefferson. And when I look at the rest of the roster, I go, at least for 2026, this is in a position where you could win the division. I know, as I mentioned, they're plus 600 on FanDuel to win the division, but they can do it. I mean, where were they on FanDuel in 2024? They have enough there to do it. Do they have enough there to win the Super Bowl? It's going to take a lot going right. Is O'Connell going to prove that he can win in the playoffs? I don't know. Is Murray going to prove he can win the playoffs? I don't know. Is it possible? Yes. There are other quarterbacks where you would say the odds are quite low. But, and look, as Leonard says, O'Connell liked Jaron Hall, which is really funny. So, you may be right, BM. I was, but also one of the advantages I have over others when it comes to like, hey, I was the first on. I do a podcast every single day, so I may have beaten people by a few days on certain things. You know what actually got me there? What really got me there was actually Troy Chapman, who does Texans Cap and works for OverTheCap.com. When I had him on the show, I was like, so what's the deal with Kyler and his contract? And as soon as he said you could get him for $1 million, I was like, oh my gosh, I am all in on this. $1 million being paid like less than the long snapper. Tavier Thomas is rich compared to what they're paying Kyler Murray. I mean, yeah, why would you not do that? Why would you not do that? Even if he ends up, even if McCarthy beats him out and Murray doesn't play well, even if he gets hurt or even whatever, like any outcome is fine for $1 million. And the fact that you have $1 million and you got to keep your team mostly together, they lost 2 defensive tackles. That's it. For a team that was supposed to be in cap hell, they lost 2 defensive tackles and they were both pretty good, but one of them ranked like 90th out of 140 by PFF. So, it's not that different of a football team than it was last year. It all just kind of lined up logically. But that's how you end up with the conversation. And so as we're here today talking about, well, should they see him as a long-term option? You put together all the things and you go, well, could he have a connection with Kevin O'Connell that maybe he hasn't with previous coaches? What about the track records of Cliff Kingsbury or Drew Petzing, who I like, and I think he will do well in Detroit, but what about them is comparable to O'Connell, who won the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator and then came here and has 2 seasons of 13 or 14 wins? Like, what's comparable about Kingsbury or Petzing / Gannon to Kevin O'Connell? Like, you could see it being better. Those guys did not have Justin Jefferson, and when they did in DeAndre Hopkins, it worked out really well. So you start going down the logical, well, could you see it? It's happened before. Could you see a quarterback coming here that nobody really wanted because they wanted JJ McCarthy to start, that had maybe had some tough times in his career working out? Like, I don't know. It's happened before. Could a team win the Super Bowl with a quarterback that they didn't draft and develop? It just happened. So, thank you, Norse Force. Yeah. I'm no patting on the back. It just made logical sense to me. The Yankee and the Brit. It's crazy how some fans think they're a better judge of talent than the coaches around them, and O'Connell knows quarterbacks. Oh, so that's where the Jaron Hall thing came from. Yeah. Look, everyone, and I mean everyone, you, me, Mel Kiper, Kevin O'Connell, Bill Walsh, Mike Holmgren, every single coach, analyst, fan ever has been wrong about quarterbacks. It is the most complicated position to evaluate in all of sports. You think about hockey or baseball, where you can look at a left winger or you can look at a pitcher or a hitter, and what factors do they have? Well, in hockey, who's playing on your line with you matters a lot, but you can evaluate individual skill sets, and those will usually reign supreme. A pitcher is out there, well, yeah, his fielding's going to matter, but we can factor for that, right? Quarterback? You have how many different factors go into quarterback? It's not just, well, does he have an offensive line? Does he have a running game? Does he have receivers? Does he have the right coach? Does he have the right schedule? Is his team healthy enough? Oh, by the way, like, is he healthy himself? Or is, like, Baker Mayfield was trying to play through stuff when he was in Cleveland and it hurt him. And then it became a conflict of him trying to play through injuries that he shouldn't be playing through. And you have the mental element of it, not only the ups and downs, but you're looked at as the face of the franchise, the pressure, the ups and downs end up all on your shoulders all the time. When you turn on the TV every single day, after a game all season long, and you have Stephen A. Smith and all these former NFL players talking about what you did and everything else. They're not talking about the left guard. They're talking about you. Only guard guy is talking about the left guard in our comment section, but not the national media. They're talking about the quarterback position. That's why I always gave Sam Darnold so much freaking credit, because like dealing with that all the time is so difficult. And, look, Kyler Murray has dealt with a lot, and he's built up a lot of scar tissue of criticism and success at times and failure at times, and he's been through a lot. JJ McCarthy showed you last year how hard that is, and now he's built up the scar tissue, and now he gets to go forward and be better at dealing with that into the future. But that's what makes it so hard to predict quarterbacks. And with Kevin O'Connell, what he saw in 2024 training camp, I think there was a little bit of hoping also, like, oh, we got it. We nailed it. It wasn't just the objective analysis, but also I was there. 2024 training camp was really good for JJ McCarthy. It checked all the boxes for me, like it did for O'Connell. We talked about it after his first preseason game of how, yeah, that was what it looked like in practice every day, and everything is on track. And then here's the other thing about quarterbacks. You never know when an ACL or a meniscus or something's going to blow and it's going to change everything, and you get set back with your progress and all that stuff. Like, you just don't know. And that's why when O'Connell says, hey, you're the one guy I could see being our long-term quarterback, you have to say you could see it, because there are some odds that you could see it. And bringing it back to, I do everything from a data perspective, it's a coin flip, because you can absolutely talk yourself into this working, and you can absolutely see all the potential pitfalls that could cause this not to work. John says, even if half of you guys are Vikings fans, y'all are wild for having such opinionated thoughts on how Kyler Murray will fare. No, I like opinionated thoughts on how Kyler Murray will fare. But I also feel like it's what I kind of do here, to put in the work to look and see if those things make sense or not. Like, when people say, well, O'Connell's just going to have to completely change his offense. It's like, having just watched back the last 2 years of Kyler Murray playing for Drew Petzing, I really don't think so. I think that, yes, I think there will be some changes, but even O'Connell said this in his press conference. He said, like, you'd be surprised at he's done a lot of things that we do. And that's absolutely true. There's a lot of stuff that you can identify for route combinations, formations, motions, the particular throws, the quick out-breaking throw to Justin Jefferson on time, 1-2-3 throw. You saw it from Carson Wentz. They're going to do that. One of the things that I think TJ Hawkinson's got to stay healthy, and he has, but after the ACL injury, but I mean, Hawkinson could be a huge weapon for him. Park yourself. So a lot of times with Jefferson, the zones get pushed back. Park yourself right underneath, bang, 8 yards. That's something Murray does a lot. That's why Trey McBride got so many catches in part. So P3 says no potential addition would matter more than getting a healthy Darisaw back. 100%. 100%. There's a lot of things that have to go right, though. That's why I'd put it at a coin flip that he becomes the long-term quarterback, because a lot of things have to go right. Darisaw has to come back. As I showed you that, in terms of the blocking, the pass blocking, it was good for him in 2024. And that mattered. That helped Kyler Murray a lot. I think he helped a little bit with getting rid of the ball fairly quickly on most plays, but because his percentage of getting rid of the ball in under 2.5 seconds was pretty high. But still, like, they got good blocking that year. And you saw it when they played against the Vikings, that he was able to have some success from the pocket. They have to block. They have to stay healthy. Those things go for any year, but when you have a quarterback that can kind of be pushed one way or the other by his circumstances, maybe even more than others with someone like Murray, that's an important factor. John says, one of our highest draft picks should be a DT. I always like the idea of drafting defensive tackles high. My concern is actually about this draft in particular. Just feels like it's not a great draft for defensive tackles. There's a lot of difference of opinion. Some people have Caleb Banks as being a top 15 pick, and Daniel Jeremiah's got him more like the 38th best player in the draft. So I honestly don't really know what to think of a guy who didn't play that much last year, has physical freak talent, but didn't have the production. I don't love that. So it's a little bit about who's available for defensive tackle. I do agree, though, that if you look at who's gotten paid at that position, it's even most positions are like that. The first and second rounders are the guys who got paid, but you can't even find guys who weren't first or second rounders for defensive tackle. Justin Matabike was maybe a third rounder, but most of them are all first or second rounders, the highest paid players at defensive tackle. Jason said the Packers won't win the division. I'm not saying that because I'm a Vikings fan. Well, I mean, that's when you look at the NFC North and what's everybody's odds right now on FanDuel. I'm kind of curious. Let's look at that. Can we see that on the screen? You can sort of see that on the screen. So Detroit is plus 160. They're the favorites. Green Bay is plus 200. And then Chicago plus 340 and the Vikings plus 600 right now on FanDuel. I think with Green Bay, what it comes down to is their offensive line and can they run the ball? Last year, they really couldn't. And then how does Micah Parsons come back? Like when does he come back? Because in the NFC North, if he doesn't come back for the first 4 games and you get down a few in this division, it's pretty tough to come back from. Young Cringe says, we didn't just lose 2 defensive tackles, also lost a safety and a center. More holes than you think. They didn't really lose a center because Ryan Kelly barely played for them last year. In comparison, what did he have? 5 games? And safety, we don't know yet if that's what they lost or not. Fair enough, though. I mean, on the defense, fair enough. They have to find some answers to that with the rest of the offseason, whether it's post June 1st, post Grenard trade, post extension. The idea that they're just running every single thing back is not true. But they do have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And I think it's fair to expect them to have a top defense as long as they have Brian Flores and the amount of talent that they have. But yeah, no, it's not exactly. I mean, Ryan Wright was big for them last year. They lost Ryan Wright. They have a very high percentage of the team that is returning. You guys debating O'Connell and his thank you for the compliments there. In his whether he knows quarterback play or not or whatever. I mean, look, my point is that even as coaches and organizations, you get it wrong sometimes, and they got it as wrong as anyone has ever gotten it letting go of Sam Darnold. But you can't use the, Brosmer wasn't ready or wasn't that good or Jaron Hall or something. Like those are swings at guys who weren't ready to play yet, who are 5th round or undrafted type of quarterbacks. That's not who you evaluate Kevin O'Connell on. The rights are as much right as the wrongs are wrong. He was right about Daniel Jones. He gets Daniel Jones for nothing on his practice squad, and the guy is now making $44 million a year. A year later, he was right about Daniel Jones. He was really right about Sam Darnold. And to this date, he has been wrong about J.J. McCarthy. He was right about Moore being there for Kirk Cousins in terms of a leadership perspective than we had seen before. And I mean, you can't say the backups. I don't know. And we're going to find out whether he's right or not about Kyler Murray. The odds are not bad that he'll be right because Murray's been good before in his career when he's had a good team. Young Cringe says, Kyler is better at throwing outside the numbers and playing out of structure. I just don't agree with playing out of structure. This is from watching him I've spent literally like the last 2 weeks just watching every day Kyler Murray film. I don't agree that he's better out of structure. I think that he is really impressive out of structure sometimes. When things break down, he can do stuff that very few other quarterbacks that aren't named like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen can do. He can escape rushes. There's a play against just the Saints one is in my mind right now because I wrote about it yesterday, but there's a play where they just screw up a blocking assignment, just completely botch it. And a guy comes running in and he steps himself up in the pocket to safety and then rips the ball to Trey McBride for like a 20-yard gain. But is he better out of structure? No, I actually think he's better when he's playing on time, when he's playing from the pocket and throwing accurately with those timing type of routes. Now, the outbreaking routes, that is definitely real. His success throwing in between the numbers, though, is not bad from a numbers perspective in between. So I do think that will he make him play in structure? He has been playing in structure. I'm telling you, like, since he came back from the ACL injury, since he's had Drew Petzing there, he's been playing in structure. That's in the numbers. It's in the play actions. It's in the 2.5-second throws. It's in the tape all over the place. He has played in structure a lot. There's a lot of plays, too, where he will bail if the read's not there, and he will scramble or he will try to find something. But in terms of, you don't have to make him play in structure. He's been playing in structure. He can operate anything that KOC has done before. Can he get it into the windows and stand and fire? That, I think, is more questionable. Will he stick with some of the reads that KOC really wants him to hang on to? I think that is questionable. But can he drop back, find somebody open, hit it, throw a seam route, to TJ Hawkinson 20 yards down the field over a linebacker in front of a safety? Oh, yeah. He's been doing it. You don't just throw for 3,800 yards and 24 touchdowns in 2024 by like accident, by just scrambling all over the place. You can't really do that. Will he make him throw over the middle? He's been throwing over the middle. It's just maybe not at the rate that Kirk Cousins did when he ran this offense, and that the rate may increase. That could happen. If the odds are 25%, you have to stick with McCarthy. 25%, which odds are we talking? Are we talking the odds that McCarthy could still work out? They're not 25%. I'm sorry, it's not. I know I said 5 out of the 25 worked out, but you may have missed the other part, which is that some of them didn't work out with their team or many years later. Tannehill, I was counting Ryan Tannehill and Geno Smith in the 5. Derek Carr worked out with his team, but Derek Carr's first 10 starts were for a travesty of a team that he got drafted to in the Raiders. And then he turned it around eventually after that. But his team was a horror show when he went there. They didn't have Justin Jefferson. So, I mean, when we look at that list of players who it's worked out, it's not 25%. And also the team going to Kyler Murray, the team did not, with the Raiders, change quarterbacks. So they believed enough in Derek Carr, so they didn't change quarterbacks. The fact that they changed quarterbacks and are talking about potentially going with someone else long-term, I mean, that all sinks the odds. The odds of success are not, 25%. Dawn says, didn't say JJ was good, just blame the coach for not doing more. What more? That's always my question. What more? What was it else that he was not doing? And that's not like attacking you. That's because it's always vague. His play calling's not good enough. Like, in what way? Which play calls are you talking about? Like, what set or what group or what theme or what? He didn't do enough for McCarthy. In what way? In what area? Which thing was he supposed to do that was different? Because some of the stuff that gets said to that ends up being stuff that he already did, which was turn more to a run first, run a lot more play action. The second half of the season, they are a top 10 play action team for JJ McCarthy. Use bigger personnel. Don't make it as complicated at the line of scrimmage. All that sort of stuff. Like, they did that. Let's see. Is it Magyar? Sorry if I have that wrong. How will they replace the defensive tackles they cut, especially if the draft is not great? That's a great question. there's a couple guys that are still out there, veterans who are in their 30s who may not even sign till later in the offseason. Guys like Shelby Harris and Daquan Jones. I really like the idea of Daquan Jones. I'm going to show you guys Daquan Jones's PFF page, because sometimes I just end up, sort of rambling on stats, and I forget that we're live streaming and I can just show you. Let's see. I think it's DAQUON or AN. There we are. Okay, so Daquan Jones has been around forever. He's 6'4", 320 pounds, and he has a really good history of being a run stuffer who can create a little bit of pressure. So last year, he had a 75.5 grade and 21 quarterback pressures for the Bills in 424 snaps. Solid run defender, big giant dude who can move bodies, big beard, 34 years old, so he's on the older side. Another guy is Shelby Harris. But there's a few of these guys, like Brent Urban. I'd like it to be someone who could actually get after the passer a little bit. Shelby Harris, another 34-year-old. Somehow get Calais Campbell here, somebody. 19 pressures last year, 500 snaps. He's had really good seasons in the past. Can still play a little bit. I like the idea of a veteran defensive tackle and then drafting one somewhere if there is a chance to do so. But even the defensive tackle group, sans Hargrave and Allen, is a lot of snaps to pick up for. But you still have some talent there. It's just, you're right that they're going to have to add it from somewhere. So we'll see on the defensive tackle position. How about, do we want to draft sim? I feel like we should draft sim. We should probably draft sim and then call it a night, but just curious if there's any other. Well, yeah, I don't know what the deal is. Northland, when you ask about Christian Wilkins, I truly have no idea. There's rumors out there of what happened with him, about the locker room, that I just don't even want to get into. Very talented player. There was an injury situation. Just feels like a guy that nobody wants to touch. Don says, will be interesting to see how Kyler's skill does with a good offensive line, multiple weapons, and a good scheme. The offensive line has to be healthy. If they're healthy, they're good. If they're not, I got questions. I mean, right now, they don't even have like a veteran swing tackle. The center situation, I do think we got a good sense for what Blake Brandel is at center, but it's not going to be perfect. He hasn't had all those things click. You're right. No, he hasn't. He really, truly has not in his career had all those things click. And that's why you always have to kind of factor for, like the situation. And that's why we see so many quarterbacks bounce up and down from year to year. It's also why we see quarterbacks go to another team and sometimes have it work out when it didn't before. This trend is growing of the number of quarterbacks who are not with their original team that ended up becoming a, like, quote, franchise quarterback. It's more common than it is the exception right now with Mayfield and Goff and Darnold, guys like that, and, Geno Smith previously. But Scott says, what positions do you think the Vikings will go in the first 4 picks, 3 rounds? That's a great interlude to a draft sim. Well, why don't we do that? Let's draft sim. Draft sim with Kyler Murray as the franchise quarterback. We're always trying to find some little nugget of, hey, we know something now. Draft sim with Adam Thielen retiring. I don't know. We'll take a look at it. All right, so 18th overall pick. You want the first 3 rounds. Care for positional value. Oh, we could choose a big board. That's interesting. Oh, is this new? We could choose a big board. Okay. I did not know we could do this. 2026 big board, trending big board. Okay. Well, let's try. So, okay. So the PFF, this probably, the PFF big board can be a little bit different than some others. Why don't we go? I don't know what 2026 big board is, but why don't we try that? Maybe that's like a consensus board. I don't know. Okay. This is interesting. So they're adding new stuff. little more positional value. All right, let's dive into it. A little more randomness. Let's see what we got here. Okay, they're adding new stuff to the mock draft simulator. All right, let's take a look at who got drafted at the top. We got Fernando Mendoza, Caleb Downs, David Bailey, Sonny Styles. Jeremiah Love goes off at 5. If Jeremiah Love goes off at 5, Vikings have no chance of trading up. I know that's been talked about a little bit. Ruben Bain is a Brown. Mekhi Lemon, I'm very curious about these wide receivers. I'm going to have my eyes on the wide receivers. Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, they go 9 and 10. Carnell Tate to the Chiefs would probably be good. This has Arvell Reese dropping to number 13. Could happen, I guess. Jordan Tyson is 15, so the receivers kind of went fast. Jermod McCoy, 17th. That leaves us with a guard who, man, would be really good to draft, but they kind of have that. We've got Avion Terrell, hard to pass that up. Casey Concepcion, Kenyon Sadiq, Caleb Banks, Dylan Thieneman, Cassius Howell, and Denzel Boston. This to me, and Emmanuel McNeil Warren, this to me screams trade down because there's a lot of players there that I would be happy with. So the team that wants to trade down has picked 29. That would be a lot to trade down. Do we think that we could get one of these players? Because I would be happy with Terrell, Concepcion, Sadiq, Banks, although I saw Concepcion had an injury, Thieneman, Howell, or McNeil Warren, or even Peter Woods. It's a lot of players to be pretty comfortable with. Maybe we should do that trade. What is Kansas City offering here? 29. Oh, wait. They got to give me stuff. 74. Oh, they're going to do 29 and 74. I think we got to do this. I think we got to do this trade to move down from 18 to 29 and get 74. Let's do it. That's a lot. It's far to move down. Okay. We moved down and we missed out on a lot of the players that we liked. Sadiq, Thieneman, Cassius Howell. I like his production. Caleb Banks. Basically every player that I liked, Avion Terrell, is all gone, but all is not lost. Denzel Boston is there. I'm not big on TJ Parker. Emmanuel McNeil Warren at 29 overall, or Colton Hood, the cornerback, Brandon Cisse, cornerback. Got some options here. I'm also very high on this guy, R. Mason Thomas, edge rusher, if they do an edge rusher thing. Let's go with the safety, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, with our top pick at 29. Into number 49, top player is Lee Hunter, defensive tackle. That actually seems like a really good idea. D'Angelo Pons, cornerback, like him. Jeremy Bernard, wide receiver. Chris Johnson. There's some talent here, but I think it's hard to pass up going with Lee Hunter. And I know we're kind of stacking on defense, but Hunter is, in this big board, the 34th overall player, and we're picking him at 49. They need a defensive tackle like we talked about. I'm just going to go with it. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Now we are on to pick 74. And the top guy on the board here is Sam Hecht, the center from Kansas State. Connor Lew, center from Auburn, is also here. A couple of tight ends. Zachariah Branch and Jake Slaughter and Jonah Coleman. I might go Jonah Coleman because I like Coleman more than I think some other people. The numbers look a little bit muddled here, but when you look at his past couple of seasons, there's a pretty big sample size of Coleman playing really well. And I know people are going to say he's not explosive enough. They just had a running back visit today, by the way. Demond Claiborne. This guy. Really, really super fast. Crazy fast. But I kind of like Coleman as a perfect fit for the Vikings. How do we pass up on the centers, though? Let's take the center and see where we're at with running back. Let's go Sam Hecht, center from Kansas State. And now we go the running back, because that's the pick we got from Kansas City. Now we go the running back, Jonah Coleman. Or do we go with the best wide receiver? Looks like a lot of receivers came off the board. Now let's go running back, Jonah Coleman. And we have one pick remaining. Garrett Nussmeier, maybe. Jennings Dunker is not a crazy idea here. Pick 97. He is a talented offensive lineman that you could use right away as depth and then develop. Antonio Williams, also a good route running wide receiver. That's hard to pass up. gosh, I kind of like the offensive lineman here, though. But we're also a little short on a wide receiver. Let's go Antonio Williams, wide receiver from Clemson. Here's what we end up with. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren with the 29th pick after a trade down with Kansas City. Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle, 49th. Sam Hecht, a center from Kansas State. Jonah Coleman, the running back from Washington. And Antonio Williams, wide receiver from Clemson. There you go. A draft simulation. Well, yeah, I mean, D'Angelo Ponza is a tough guy to not pick there. There were a lot of, I mean, it's a tough, if you're being asked to trade down from number 18 to 29, it's a long way to go. So you got to be sure that you're going to get stuff that you need later. I don't know if they would do that trade or not, or if they would just want to stick and pick their favorite player. Where the sweet spot seems to be every time I draft sim is moving down like 5 spots. And then you could still get some of the guys that you like. Anyway, well, really enjoyable chat tonight. Very interesting with this nugget from Albert Breer about Kyler Murray and the potential of becoming a long-term quarterback. I would just advise that it is March and we are a long way away from Kyler Murray becoming their franchise quarterback, but I think that it is a little bit telling about how they're viewing this situation with Murray versus where they stand with JJ McCarthy. It's just sort of more on the giant pile of evidence about where they stand. That's the bottom line, but there's a long, long way to go for that to happen. So we'll see what else happens going forward into this second week of the offseason, really officially the new league year, the free agency and all that stuff. There's a lot to be resolved. And on Thursday, we're going to get the retirement press conferences of CJ Ham and Adam Thielen. I'm looking forward to being out there at TCO Performance Center for those, and we'll see what happens. And I've also promised on Thursday night that Manny Hill I'm going to make up a fake schedule for Manny Hill, and he's going to pick it with Kyler Murray as the quarterback to see how many wins we think the Vikings will really get. So we'll try to make it a fun week and see what pops up. Thanks everybody again for stopping in, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Football.